29th. And I am the chair of this committee. With me at the dais today are council members Palmisano, Johnson, Goodman, Ellison, Schrader, Council President Bender, Vice Chair Cunningham, Council members Fletcher, Reich, Cano, and Camp Gordon, Councilmember Gordon. Let the record reflect that we do have a quorum of this committee. And so, colleagues, just want to give a few announcements. We are going to be using speaker management, so if you want to sign in for that. We have 3 items on today's agendas in addition to the reports of committees. Item number 1 is the public hearing to consider the reappointment of by the Executive Committee of David Frank to the appointed position of Director of Community Planning and Economic Development for a 2-year term beginning January 2nd, 2020. And I will open the public hearing regarding Mr. Frank's reappointment. Is there anyone here to speak to that issue? And I believe there is a sign-in sheet here. We do want to note that the speakers will be allowed 2 minutes to speak, and we do have a timer. And so I will call up the first speaker to sign in. And if you do want to speak to this issue, please sign in with the clerk. Lee Samuelson is our first speaker.
Chair Jenkins, members of the...
Excuse me, Mr. Samuelson, before you begin,
oh, sure.
And we'll make sure you have your full 2 minutes. I just want to really clarify that speakers for this portion of the public hearing are, we ask that you speak to the reappointment of David Frank. So I just want to clarify that this portion of our agenda is related to the reappointment of the CPAD director. You may proceed.
Oh, yeah. Chair Jenkins, members of the committee, I much appreciate both the City Council and the Met Council accepting and approving the advancement of the Regional Apprenticeship Training Center in North Minneapolis. It's referred to on page 13 of the attached PDF, and which I could submit. But this local clean energy job and STEM training center resonates with the vision of Van Jones and falls in lines with the goals of the original RFI for local and minority hiring. However, CPED has yet to accept the money for it to happen, and I'm disappointed and confused that CPED has not accepted the comment after 14 months, according to the original date of the document, November 28th, 2018. And since this was under David Frank's tenure, I don't know the whole story, but I would like to ask that the City Council try to get some answers as to why CPED is holding up this great project before taking a vote to reappoint him to another 2-year term. I also have concerns that there are no people of color on CPED leadership team level, which should be diverse, if not more diverse, as a city as we move toward a more diverse population. And I also like to say, since Earth Day of 2016, I had so far gotten 1,674 signatures for a petition in favor of clean energy and energy efficiency workforce training programs that bring in low-income communities and communities of color. And this encouraging project is also the reason why I had personally worked so hard to get well over 100 signatures needed to bring the equitable workforce training resolution to be heard and passed unanimously at the 2017 Minneapolis DFL convention, which I could submit as comments to the clerk.
Thank you so much
Yeah.
for your comments. Our next speaker is Ann Long. Please state your name and address for the record.
Good afternoon, Chair Jenkins, council members, and city staff. I'm Ann Long, Executive Director of Plymouth Youth Center, North Minneapolis, and the Capri Theater, and also a longtime resident of North Minneapolis. I'm here to say a few words in support of the reappointment of David Frank as Director of CPED. On David's watch, the renovation expansion in North Minneapolis of the Capri Theater has soared. Much has happened in the couple of years with our partnership with CPED, such as we purchased the property from the city, finally, received a generous city loan, got help cleaning up environmental hazards, rezoned and replatted the properties, and broke ground on October 17th, 2019. Today, most of the steel is up, the project's on track, and we expect to have a grand opening sometime in the fall of 2020. I could end there, but there's a little bit more to talk about how important David Frank and the CPED staff and city council have worked with us, and why your involvement's been so important, their involvement, to ensure a bright future for the Capri, the one remaining theater in North Minneapolis out of the dozen or so that once dotted the north side neighborhoods. PCYC is a small nonprofit working in the north side and with the north side for about 66 years. We have a strong record in youth development and education, the arts, community building, but we're not developers. So we've seriously needed the city's help to be our champion, to guide us in the ways of City Hall and the city's government, and to give us targeted support for the Capri project that will redound in the long and short run to the benefit of the kids and families of North Minneapolis, and which will stimulate the economic growth of the West Broadway commercial corridor. David and CPED have stepped up to that task, and we're most appreciative. Next fall, we'll have a grand opening. I hope you all will be there. It'll be a time when the community can come together and celebrate life and hope in North Minneapolis. We believe that David's leadership of CPED is important to achieve the goals of the city and its diverse peoples, to build and nurture communities that work for us all. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Ms. Long. Our next speaker is Felicia Perry. Hello, Ms. Perry.
Hi, how are you all doing? Good afternoon. My name is Felicia Perry. I am the Executive Director of the West Broadway Business and Area Coalition. We are a community organization that works hand in hand with North Side business owners, entrepreneurs, enterprisers, and community to create a vital, thriving West Broadway and North Minneapolis by way of economic development, which includes our community engagement. We've been able to do a lot of that with the help of various departments in the city, including CPED. I'm here today to ask for more, to be quite honest, because we can do more. We're positioned, a lot of us are positioned to really do more, and we're asking that you all remove the barriers to doing more and doing more now, and really commit to working with us. And that includes having us, that means small business owners and community members, at the table. I'm urging you all and challenging you all to stop doing business as usual, because that's what's still happening. And do it different. It's what we elected you all for. So part of that is, where are you all positioned to help make that happen? And I know, and you all know, that there's a position that you're in that you can influence that. And that's what I'm asking you all to do. Remove the barriers to us having access to CPED. And if that comes from leadership, it needs to come from leadership. If it comes from the council, it needs to come from the council. But it absolutely needs to come. I'm done arguing about who's going to do it. So let's get it done.
Thank you. Our next speaker is Jennifer Arnold. Welcome.
Hi, good afternoon. Thanks for having time for us to speak today. My name is Jennifer Arnold. I live in Midtown Phillips. And for 5 years, I've been working with renters as part of Inquilinos Unidos por Justicia, or Tenants United for Justice. So for the past 5 years, I've been working with renters across Minneapolis. And I've seen what the city has to offer specifically for low-income renters of color in our city. And we can do better. I was really excited when this council came on board 3 years ago to start working on policies to support renters in our city. And frankly, I've been really disappointed by the progress that we've made. Because we have made progress, but we can do more. Again, and I think in a lot of ways, CPED has slowed down the process of bold changes that renters in our city need. And so I'm really interested in this reappointment process to actually get clear directions and priorities from the city about what it means to take bold actions for renters. And this is what it's going to take to keep our families of color in our city. We need a recognition of the crisis. We need intervention in the market. We need affordability that's actually affordable for people in our city. And we need a bold CPED that will take these things on. So thanks for being here today, and I'm excited to watch us move forward around this stuff.
Thank you so much. Our next speaker is Kyle Samajima.
Hello, yes, Kyle Samajima. I'm Minneapolis Climate Action Executive Director and Ward 8 resident and Lindale Neighborhood Association Board Chair. And I am here to, first of all, say thank you to staff and council members for support of climate and environmental policies that are protecting us now and into the future. We have declared a climate emergency in the city, which means moving away from business as usual. We need city staff in CPED and Public Works and city council members and the mayor to take bold action that reflects and addresses our crisis. In fact, the city's own climate action plan, without rapid action to reduce these emissions, we will face threats to our economic livelihood, public health, and supplies of food, fresh water, and power. These impacts will not be felt equally across the globe or our city. The poorest regions of the world and our city will be the hardest hit. Likewise, in our own community, low-income and vulnerable citizens face disproportionate impacts from climate change. And in bringing in reflections from other community members, the Upper Harbor Terminal Project, the East Phillips Indoor Urban Farm, and the Regional Apprentice Training Center that Lee mentioned with renewable green job training in North Minneapolis all have something in common. And projects that should reflect the Climate Action Plan and the environmental justice and green zone principles and goals have the appearance or reality of being led by internal staff and not sufficiently responsive to community concerns or needs, including CPED. I urge more transparency and diversity in CPED in hiring, and also urge CPED to be responsive to community concerns regarding the Upper Harbor Terminal, East Phillips, and the Regional Training Center. The Regional Training Center has the support from so many organizations and community members and council members, and we'd like answers as to why this project is being held up, and especially regarding David Frank's reappointment. Thank you so much, and thanks for everything that you do.
Thank you for your comments. Our next speaker is Danny Schwartzman. Is Danny available?
Sorry for the delay. The door was locked.
Quite all right.
Thank you for the opportunity to speak to you all today. And I own Common Roots Cafe in up near Uptown. I'm the chair of the board of the Main Street Alliance. And since 2007, I've owned and run my business, employing now about 50 people. And I know how hard firsthand it is to run a small business. I also know what a privilege it is. And it's something that I know that far too many in our community don't have access to. And since 2007, I've been paying attention to public policy, especially around small business. And in the last couple of years, I've seen a lot of progress. I've been more actively engaged on these issues, and I know that many of you have as well, and I really appreciate the support that nearly all of you have expressed time and time again for small business, and the renewed attention to how far we are right now from where I think we all would like to be in the future. As as it relates to the appointment of David Frank, I think, like I said 2 years ago in a similar conversation, this is in no way personal about David Frank. I don't know David personally well. I've had a couple meetings, but I know that he probably cares about similar things, and I know many of you have a great relationship with him. I also know that CPED staff generally care about the same things I do, I think, and also want to see positive changes, and we've seen some positive changes. We've seen a growth in the small business team. We've seen some of a report of the small business programs, which we had not seen before. The scope of the progress over the last 2 years, though, in my opinion, is terribly small relative to the scope of the problem. I know that small businesses have such a giant impact in our communities, and I know that we can't rely on banks to screen out who can open a small business in our community. I know that our programs rely on existing systems that are too often biased against many in our community, and we need really, really proactive, positive programs that right now we just simply don't have. Incremental change is good, but it's not enough. The scope of the problems that we have in our community are far, far too large for minor adjustments to a 2% program that was developed 30 years ago to be sufficient. I'd welcome the opportunity to continue to talk with you, to continue to talk with CPED staff, and thank you for your time.
Thank you, Mr. Schwarzman. Our next speaker is Anthony Damiano. My apologies if I mispronounce your name.
Oh, it's fine. Happens all the time. Hello, my name is Anthony Damiano, and I am a PhD candidate at the Humphrey School of Public Affairs at the University of Minnesota. I'm here today because a coalition of organizations, including Inquilinos Unidos and the Alliance, asked me to share research we're conducting on the effects of new market rate apartments on existing rents. This research is co-authored with Christopher Frenier, another PhD candidate at the University of Minnesota, and is also supported by the Minnesota Housing Partnership and the Center for Urban and Regional Affairs. It is important to consider how the construction of new, particularly high-end market rate housing affects nearby low-income communities. Growing the available supply of housing through new market rate development can help address issues of affordability and opportunity, but who benefits from these developments depends on what new type of housing is built. We know that in the long run, new market rate housing does filter down and become more affordable. However, it can take upwards of 30 years before housing built for the top end of the market becomes affordable for people at the median. Our study hopes to shine a light on what happens in the short term. Using data on building level rent prices in Minneapolis between 2000 and 2018, we compared how the construction of a new market rate apartment building affected rents in existing housing close to new construction compared to similar buildings that were built farther away. We find that the effects of new construction vary significantly based on whether the existing housing is of a higher or lower quality. Our research suggests that lower quality housing close to new construction experiences between a 5 and 12% increase in rents compared to similar quality buildings built slightly farther away, or existing buildings slightly farther away. Conversely, we estimate that rent in higher quality buildings near new construction, rents were largely unchanged, or that they saw a slight decrease in rents compared to buildings built farther away. These effects are both statistically and practically significant. We estimate that over a 5-year period, a family could pay upwards of 20% more in rent.
Excuse me, Mr. Damiano. It sounds like you're reading from a report. Just an effort of fairness, you can submit the report and we can all read it. However, everybody has been relegated to 2 minutes to speak. So
Thank you. Then
I want to make sure we respect that for everyone. But
Thank you very
please submit the full report so that we can all have access to it.
Will do. Thank you very much.
Thank you for your comments. Our next speaker then is Tram Wong.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
My name is Tram Huang, and I'm a policy advocate at the Alliance and a member of the Make Homes Happen Coalition. The data that was just presented by Cura highlights a phenomenon that communities of color and low-wealth communities have experienced for generations, and something that we've consistently pointed to as a real and negative consequence of neoliberal planning. An unleashed housing market that only large developers with huge capital backers are equipped to take advantage of, resulting in rising rents and an increased risk of displacement for lower income renters who are overwhelmingly people of color. This flawed planning theory directly contradicts the city goals of ending racial inequities in housing. Rather than encouraging endless luxury development as a sign of a healthy housing market, the city needs to realize the impact that this unfettered growth has on historically disinvested communities. The research is clear, and we saw that with what Tony presented. High-end development has a very real and harmful effect on rents of lower quality buildings. While other luxury apartments see a slight decrease in rents, lower income residents who live in older buildings, often the same NOAA buildings we're putting public dollars into trying to preserve, experience an increase in rents. As the city continues to make headlines for consecutive years of construction permits valued at more than $1 billion, we need to pause and critically analyze who benefits from these new developments. At the end of the day, it's not what we build that matters, but who we build for. As someone who was trained as a planner at the Humphrey School, I understand the dilemma that planning departments across the country, including CPED, are caught in. Planners are tasked with stoking property values, either because they are low and we want them higher, or because they're already high and their deflation puts city budgets at risk. This conflicts with the goal of developing public, decommodified, and permanently affordable housing, which our communities know are effective housing strategies. As advocates, we look forward to working with the department to transform this tension into a turning point for the way that planning departments see their role in leading us towards a more equitable city. We hope that this direction involves shifting the department's focus from market facilitation to market intervention. Thank you.
Excuse me. Our next speaker, number 9, is Luis Patimo.
Thank you so much for having us speak today. My name is Luis Patino. I am the owner and operator and executive chef of Cafe Racer Kitchen. I am a restaurant and catering company in the Seward neighborhood of Minneapolis. I am a believer in the American dream. I am an immigrant. I am a person of color, and I am a representation of one of the individuals here that we are trying to make a difference for. I'm also one of the fortunate few that has been able to receive help from the CPED program through extreme barriers and through the ability to understand and learn a completely new and different language. That is the language of finance. This language is not a language that is accessible to most individuals. This is a language that requires one to really understand how it is that one can provide and access a bank, how one can put money together to be able to start a business. One can not have the ability to necessarily have these tools available to oneself if one does not have generational wealth, if one does not come from a background which allows a person to have the accessibility to understand how to put together a balance sheet, how to put together a financial statement, how to actually understand how it is that one can speak the language of a bank. Este no es el idioma que yo inicialmente hablé. This is not the language that I learned to speak. I had to go through a process of first actually understanding and teaching myself how a bank would listen to me. This is not the accent that I would actually speak with. This is how a bank was able to give me money, to assimilate myself into a culture, right? If this is what we're trying to do, if this is what we're trying to ask for people, to actually assimilate themselves into a culture so then they can access the tools and the resources that we want to have them have as a society, then we are failing each other, right? We need to look at our humanity. We need to look at our ability to actually give people the chance to give and create generational wealth for each other. I am here asking to simply look at how we can do that. There were times in which I was able to receive help. I have had good years and bad years, and I would hope that going forward, the city is going to create tools to allow the access of individuals to have better resources for the ability to create generational wealth for our society. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Very well timed. Our next speaker is Corinne Horowitz.
Hello, good afternoon. Thank you, Louise, for being here today. I know it takes a lot to leave your restaurant and your business to come to City Hall. And with that, actually, before I speak, I was wondering if I could give a chance for the next speaker, which is Sammy McDowell from Avenue Eatery. He is joining us via video conference today.
So I just want to be
Oh, I can also
sure.
just speak in advance of that. And
I'm
then
sorry?
I'll let him speak after that. That's, I mean, whatever you want.
Right. I just understand that the video is 3 minutes long.
We can cut Sammy off after 2 minutes if that's, I mean, that's fine.
Just in fairness to everyone else who was speaking here.
Yeah. The first
have to.
video was 9 minutes, so we had to work hard to cut it down. But we will cut it up at 2. And I understand that. Okay, I'll speak first. As you know, my name is Corinne Horowitz.
Can we restart the 2 minutes? I'm sorry.
My name is Corinne Horowitz. I'm the State Director of Main Street Alliance, Minnesota. As you know, we're a statewide advocacy network fighting for things like more affordable health care, paid family medical leave, fighting preemption at the state capitol. We started our chapter right here in Minneapolis to include small businesses in the conversation on earn, sick, and save time because the progressive community and the city was not talking to small businesses and they did not have a seat at the table. We realized there was enormous lack of communication and outreach to small businesses, and we worked with you to create a small business team in 2016. Even though it was a lot more challenging than it should have been. Since that time, City Council has passed 15 with no tip penalty, a wage theft ordinance, a plastic bag ban, a menthol cigarette ban. All of these are positive things for working families and our climate, and they impact small businesses. The eyes of our nation will be on Minneapolis to see how our small businesses are faring under these new changes. So just as small businesses, especially restaurants, are doing an incredible amount of work to adapt to 15 and to adapt to these changes in a tight labor market, so must the city put in the work to adapt the department of CPED and make it work better for small businesses. The small business team, first led by Eric Garcia Luna and now Zoe Teal, has been very helpful given the resources they have, but it is not enough. It is not enough to add just 2 people. A 2% loan program that most small businesses cannot access is not enough. The BTAP program that helps associations provide technical assistance must continue, and it isn't enough. We need big structural changes within the department if we're going to achieve the equity goals you have outlined in the 2040 plan. I know that Minneapolis can be a North Star, a shining example of a city that's truly committed to working families and also to small businesses and the people who are trying to start a small business in our city. We need a department that is committed to a vision of creating a great city for small businesses and to start and grow and thrive. We need to end the secret handshake. That is an open conversation that we have a secret handshake. We're committing to focusing on this as well at the city. We do a lot of work at the state capitol, but we are committed to bringing small businesses to talk to you thank you. Perfect, 2 minutes. So I will start this now. The next speaker is Sammy.
The next speaker is Sammy McDowell.
I'm the owner and operator of Sammy's Avenue Eatery. Both locations in the vibrant North Minneapolis, and we also have our new location in Northeast Minneapolis. We have been fortunate enough to open these locations without help from the city to get those, those things that the city offered, the 2% loan or the facade grant. We've actually taken it upon ourselves also to we mentor other small businesses and no charge because there has been a gap in the pipeline from the city to the small business world. And there's a lot of small businesses that are not being reached. There's not a lot of small businesses that are being supported in the way that I feel like personally that they should. So a lot of them come to me for mentorship and other folks on the, in the business world that have been, doing this business for a while. There are so many things that, so many ideas and so many great things that I feel like working together we could accomplish. Specifically, an overhaul of the 2% loan, making sure that we make that more accessible to people of color in particular, because that those financials and having that capital is very important to a upstart business or even a business that's been around for a while, small businesses. We try to support the community as a whole, making sure that some community members get jobs that couldn't otherwise get jobs at any company or anything like that. We definitely support those people. We work in partnership with
Thank you.
Awesome. Very creative way to testify. Our next speaker is Daniel Swenson Klatt. Good afternoon.
Thank you. I'm Daniel Swenson Klatt. I'm a South Minneapolis resident and an owner of Butter Bakery Cafe. I speak to you as a member of Main Street Alliance as well. And we envision a city that truly recognizes, supports the efforts of small businesses as the economic lifeblood of our city. And while our city as a whole has embraced far-reaching efforts to improve workplaces, become environmentally friendly, and embrace diversity, the department charged with supporting our small business community is still a little stuck in its original design, which was meant to support the stabilization of our city many years ago. It worked while it worked, but it won't get us to 2040. Let me suggest an analogy. 3 years ago, Main Street Alliance planted a seed, encouraging the formation of the small business team. And while it has indeed bloomed, the team is currently sitting in a pot on the windowsill. The field it should be growing in is lacking. It's extracted. It's got buckthorn, big developers pulling out. I believe the small business team, if planted as a cover crop, could actually be the ability to be a soil amender. It could provide the microbial growth, the re-energizing, the fertilization that could restore CPED to its community space. And the communities that rely upon this will have the nutrients they need as well. The last dozen years have seen amazing changes in the way our city works. Main Street Alliance has some great ideas to help this city flourish, and we'd like to present them as well. We love working with David to help him get the support from the small business community and from our council in order to grow this soil, rebuild it, re-energize. And it would be a city where I, as a small business owner, would love to remain planted. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Our next speaker is Caitlin Magistad. Good afternoon.
Hi, my name is Caitlin Magistad, and I'm here with MCCD and Make Homes Happen. Thank you for the opportunity to comment this afternoon. The leadership and vision guiding CPED staff and activities must be grounded in concern for the public good and eliminating racial disparities with proactive strategies for equitable growth. Ensuring people of all incomes benefit from development requires centering residents experiencing the most residential instability and intentionally guiding land use and investments to overcome these discriminatory housing systems. Many of us, staff, council, advocates, and community members feel the urgency of this moment for housing. However, structural changes and long-term holistic community impact require leadership that moves beyond the urgency thinking that created our current systems. Make Homes Happen supports empowering CPED staff to act boldly in the city's pursuit of innovations and dedicated resources to achieve housing stability for everyone in Minneapolis. As housing advocates, we are eager to continue partnering with both CPED and the council on proven programs and innovative strategies to meet the housing demands of our community, particularly when the market does not. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Our next speaker is Ariana Feldman.
Hello, good afternoon. My name is Ariana Feldman. I am an organizer with Inquilinos Unidos por Justicia, United Renters for Justice. I'm here today to take the opportunity to talk a little bit about working with renters from across the city, with hundreds, if not thousands, of renters from across the city. We see firsthand how the housing crisis is impacting people on the ground. And I'm here because we hear a lot about numbers and statistics, but I'm truly afraid that if things continue as they're going right now, that the people who make this city what it is, the people who make this city what we love, will be pushed out of this city, and it will no longer be our city. I am here to say that I'm really grateful for the work that CPED has done, the risks that CPED has taken, especially with residents on the north side with Con, and with building more opportunities. And the truth is that we need to see more of that. We need to see more risk taking. We need to see more bold action to address the housing crisis that we're in, and to stop what we're seeing happening right now. I hope that moving forward, CPED that you will pass a resolution to make sure that CPED prioritizes people, prioritizes renters, and not the big developers and property tax base, which are not who makes the city who we are. Thank you.
Our next speaker is Lacey Gonzalez.
Hello, thank you for letting me speak today. My name is Lacey Gonzalez. I am a wife and a mother of 3 mixed-race children. I would like to tell a little bit about my family's rental history since we've moved to Minneapolis. 6 years ago, my family moved into a one-tier community into a newly renovated unit. Living conditions got so bad that my daughter was too scared to sleep in her own bed because the mice might bite her. We moved into another newly renovated unit in a different one-tier community where we had 3 different landlords in 3 years. Each landlord came in, said they wanted to improve living conditions, but in the end, they renovated a handful of units and resold the buildings for profit. And they never improved living conditions for the tenants that stayed there through unaffordable rent increases. We now live in our 4th place in 6 years and hope to have healthy living conditions. My story is one of thousands of tenants that live here in Minneapolis. Tenants that are mistreated by their landlords. The city gives these landlords rental licenses, but fail in protecting the tenants. We have been fighting for tenant rights for 3 years, and the progress has been very slow. We need to do better. Passing 2 new ordinances isn't enough. We need to implement things like TOPA and more renters' rights. Tenants need to know the city is there to protect them, and the city cares about our welfare. We are in a housing crisis. We need people like CPED to have a clear vision of what they want and what the future looks like for its tenants. They also need to make sure, thank you.
Brown.
Good afternoon, Council. I want to resonate, my name's Timothy Brown. I want to resonate the same thing that Lacey was talking about. I'm a member of the North Side and a part of the Mahmoud Khan portfolio. With these landlords out here doing what they're doing and getting away with it is just despicable. So CPED came and helped me and my constituents in our situation, but they left us Northsiders. They've been moving real slow. So we want to know what's going to be done to help us as people of color, and where's the affordable housing going to be affordable? Because we see developments going up all over the city, but we don't see anything that's affordable. So I'm just being concise. That's all I have to say. Can we, CPED, come in and put the brakes on profits and work with the people? Thank you.
Thank you. Our next speaker is Peter McLaughlin. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon. I'm Peter McLaughlin. I live in the Erickson neighborhood. I'm the executive director at LISC. And as I took the light rail over here, I remember David Frank's role in changing Portland and the way Portland does development around transit and uses transit as an instrument of change. what we're really looking at here is a historic change in the city. And the gentleman from Main Street talked about that. It used to be there was this exodus from the city. Now we have this movement back into the city. So that's a new set of issues, and we need to make a transition. It has some opportunities, but it also has some challenges. And the CPED director and CPED itself is right at the middle of all those forces coming together. And it's going to take innovation, commitment, openness to listening, and a real embrace of ownership and wealth building if we're going to move forward. I believe David Frank embraces those values, those qualities. He also has an ability to take all those conflicting forces that come to focus on CPED and its mission, and he moves together and he gets projects done. I think that's critically important to go beyond talk, to talk about actual investments in the community. And LISC has worked with many of the people who've come up here, many of the projects that have been talked about. LISC has been an investor to bring investment money to communities, people, and projects that don't get the investment that they need to make this a city for everyone. And so if you think about investments in affordable housing, historic levels that have been led by CPED, the policy changes on the comp plan, the new ownership strategies, the commercial development, the cultural corridors, all of those things are in the works now, and they're going to make this a better city. One last thing I would say about David. If you're not impatient right now, you're not paying attention. I know David to be impatient for change. And I think he's a person who can take that impatience, work with the institutions and all the forces, and fight to make this a city that works for everyone. So I endorse David's reappointment. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. McLaughlin. Our next speaker is Owen Duckworth. Welcome.
Thank you. My name is Owen Duckworth. I'm the Director of Organizing and Policy at the Alliance for Metropolitan Stability. The Alliance is an organization that's working on addressing the housing crisis, displacement issues, and the legacy of structural racism and disinvestment from communities of color in our city and our region. We're a member of the Housing Justice League, which a number of folks from partner organizations have spoken already. We're part of Make Homes Happen. And a co-convener of the Equity in Place Coalition as well. We've also been a partner with the city as part of PolicyLink's anti-displacement policy network across a number of other regions in the country. I'm just going to quickly highlight a few principles that I think are really vital that CPED adopt and take on, and a couple of perhaps more tangible ideas in the 2 minutes I have here. At a high level, we really need a CPED that sees itself accountable to community first and foremost, and builds a culture of engaging with a city that is now majority renter and a renter population that is majority people of color. We need a CPED that understands the realities that our communities face, especially around housing and economic development issues, and sees Minneapolis' current population as assets and too often underinvested in assets historically. Speaking a little more concretely, hopefully, we really feel like CPED needs to redefine city affordability guidelines to reflect accurately what the Minneapolis median income is. That's based on actual incomes of residents as opposed to like a 60% area median income focus on a lot of affordability, quote unquote affordability, which is actually basically market rate in our city right now based on people who live here's income. We need a CPED that understands that the market has not worked historically for communities of color, has not worked for low wealth people, and that market-driven solutions to housing issues has never happened in this country. The basis of most of white upper middle class families having housing stability and wealth building opportunities was because of massive government investment in housing, not because of the market. And I'll say the final piece is just we look forward to continuing working with the City Council, with CPED, and a series of our partners on working together on creating a different culture and a different way of operating with community.
Thank you, Mr. Duckworth. Our next speaker is Eric Hauge.
Thank you, Chair and Council members. My name is Eric Hauge. I'm a Ward 4 constituent and the Executive Director of Homeline, which is a statewide tenant advocacy organization, nonprofit, and we operate a tenant hotline in Minneapolis and throughout the state. We want to say we're thankful to the City Council and CPED for being a funding partner for our tenant hotline for the past 5 years. Our attorneys, tenant advocates, and multilingual language line staff advised over 3,700 Minneapolis renter households last year. This was a 16% increase in renter clients over 2018 and a 28% increase in clients over 2017. This is a clear indicator of what you already know, that Minneapolis is a renter majority city and is growing significantly more so. The renters that currently live in the city are facing a myriad of challenges that are direct failures of our housing market. We hear about rent increases, substandard housing conditions, arbitrary displacement, lease non-renewals, evictions, license revocations, widespread housing discrimination. We know that extremely low-income households and renters of color are facing these issues disproportionately more than white households. It's been demonstrated in public venues such as the Strategic Racial Equity Action Planning process and in our client statistics. 52% of our clients last year in Minneapolis were people of color, and half of clients had incomes at or below 30% AMI. It's for these reasons why Homeline is a Make Homes Happen member, and we stand in solidarity with our partners, the Alliance, Inquilinos Unidos, Parks and Power, Jewish Community Action, Housing Justice Center, Powderhorn Park Neighborhood Association, the Main Street Alliance, in calling for a CPED that is focused on producing, preserving the most deeply affordable housing for households at or below 30% AMI. We need a CPED to directly intervene in the market to ensure public land is used to benefit those most in need of our community, and it needs to lead on reforms that protect and advocate for tenants, particularly renter households of color, who are impacted by exploitative and racist rental leasing practices. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Hoggy. Our next speaker, I believe, may be Grace. Last name starts with a B. PPNA, Powderhorn Park Neighborhood Association.
Good afternoon, Council, and thank you for allowing us the opportunity to speak today. My name is Grace Berkey, and I'm a renter in Ward 6, and I work for the Powderhorn Park Neighborhood Association. I'm here today to voice my support among the voices you've heard today for calling for a bolder CPED. A couple years ago, PPNA got notified that there was a development planned on the corner of Lake Street and Chicago Avenue. We instantly knew that our community would not be pleased by 48 luxury studio apartments starting at $1,450 a month rent. We did not expect to see our community show up to stand against it, but they did. These apartments have now gone up and will be rented by people who don't live in our community, while many families in our community are unable to find housing that is affordable and fits their family's needs. Through this process, I learned that there are several things in place that made it impossible for our community members to influence the kind of development happening in their neighborhood. Some of those things are related to historic disinvestment from communities in South Minneapolis, and some are related to ordinances and processes used by CPED or lack thereof. To ensure that not only our city is able to meet the need for affordable housing, but that all development happening in the city of Minneapolis reflects the people who live here, we need a bold CPED with a vision and strategy for intervening in the market. We need a CPED that acknowledges a housing crisis in our city and then does something about it. We need a CPED that understands the way racism has been perpetuated using existing systems and then works to dismantle them. We need a CPED that is not only transparent with community members, but creates tools and power in communities to leverage their own development. We need a CPED for the people. Thank you.
Sorry, our last speaker is Lance Lamont.
Hello, I'm Lance Lamont. I'm a resident at Little United Tribes, and I'm here today to speak on CPED. I have a request, not a comment. I request that you guys open up appointments to the wider community, not just business owners or political people, but actual average residents. And most specifically, maybe putting on CPED someone who got a felony charge on their record, because if you guys don't understand, if you're a felon getting released from prison, it is extremely hard to find housing, period. Most of the time, our felons that get released from prison go into GRH housing, three-quarters house, or halfway houses. The problem with that is that after the county funding stops for that felon, they get evicted. They leave that housing, and they don't have nowhere to go. Most public housing, Section 8 housing, Section 9 housing, don't accept felons to be put on the lease. So any family member that tries taking a felon in will have to jeopardize their housing and risk eviction. So I have a question. Is CPED taking into consideration the volume of criminals and felons that are inside their county, inside the city? And what is being done to make sure that they have housing opportunities, that they're not going to be pimped out by the county, by programs until the county wants to stop funding them and then they become homeless? I believe that even though that we're felons, we're criminals, that we should have a right to live and we should have an opportunity to live somewhere and not be pushed out, marginalized, become homeless, or make our families become homeless because they want to help us. That's it. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Lamont. That was our last speaker signed in to speak today. Is there anyone else seeking to speak to the reappointment of David Frank? Can you sign in, please?
I apologize greatly for not knowing the protocols. I'm Barb Truey, and I'm a renter in South Minneapolis. You have a lot of good people that are looking to do good for the people. The constructions that are taking place are destroying a lot of things besides our houses and our families. It's extending to our waters. It's extending to the drinkabilities, our sustainabilities of our food and our chains. We need to stop the progression that is destroying, which is the commercials, the monies, the renting. The people that live here need a voice to be heard. We have grown up here, we've been born here, we need to stay in our place of our communities. As I get older, it's getting harder to continue to fight this fight. Not with just my voice, but with my heart. Because I cry for the people that are not being heard, that are not still here being represented, because they don't have a passport, they don't have citizenship. This is a multi-generational issue we are facing as a people. We have to stop going back to taking, consuming, consumption of the people. We stand together firmly. This is a delegation of people that look for your direction. When we're talking tier ones, we have licenses out there. When we are getting taxed by our landlords and the people we live with, we have a problem. I can get hit so many times more, and I will still get up to stand. And I hope when I'm falling, that one of you will at least pick me up and sit me on my feet or a bench close, because I don't have much time left. Thank you.
There are no additional speakers signed in. I will now close the public hearing, and I would offer Mr. Frank an opportunity to speak to his reappointment. Welcome, Mr. Frank.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Good afternoon, committee members. I am very grateful to have the chance to do this job. I get to work with very smart, very dedicated professionals who could work anywhere. And they choose to work for this city, for this department, and advance the work we do to make the city more equitable for all the residents and all the businesses in Minneapolis. With the department's leadership team, we are doing the work, we are doing more of it, and we are innovating everywhere we can to advance the city's comprehensive plan and strategic and racial equity action plan goals. I am proud to have the chance to lead this great team as we work to get these goals done. I'd like to mention just a few of the things we've done over the past 2 years and also describe what's coming next. We have been doing the work to assist entrepreneurs, businesses, and residents with job training in economic development. As you saw in our small business program review earlier this month, we are achieving good results from our existing business lending programs and the small business team, and we will be doing even more as we make recommendations to the Council for adjustments which have more of a racial equity focus. And as you know, as process owners, this work is coordinated with the economic inclusion goals of SREAP. In 2019, our Step Up program provided 1,300 internships at 195 companies. 860 Step Up interns earned elective credit, and our interns earned over $3 million in summer wages. Our youth program providers met and exceeded their enrollment goals this year, and MSP Tech Hire is in its 4th year providing IT and providing tuition support for non-traditional IT students. And 9 new career pathways were funded in 2019 with a mixture of industries from healthcare to manufacturing. In 2019, we handled almost 600 liquor licenses, a 30% increase from the previous year. And we also took in 700 liquor catering applications and a 1,000% increase from the previous year. As we've talked about a lot today, the small business team joined CPED early in 2019, and this year the team responded to 540 cases. That's a 30% increase from 2018. The small business team staff visited over 100 businesses with targeted and proactive outreach. Staff also hosted or participated in more than 20 community events throughout the year, and our new business portal saw almost 10,000 visits in 2019. This year, our Business and Technical Assistance Program funded coaching for 460 small businesses and entrepreneurs, 93 emerging real estate developers, and 11 cooperative-owned businesses. Our business lending programs provided $1.8 million in loans to 38 small businesses to help finance their growth, and our Great Streets Facade Improvement Grants provided $160,000 to improve the appearance of 68 commercial storefronts around the city. We awarded $530,000 to 18 organizations across the city to support commercial districts, and we made over 50 business retention visits to companies. We sold the Nicollet Hotel block to United Properties for more than $10 million to fund affordable housing. We sold property, as you heard, for the Capri Theater expansion, along with making a $700,000 loan for the project. We approved land sale terms for the Indigenous Peoples Task Force project. And we secured almost $3 million in redevelopment and brownfield grants for 10 projects. And at Upper Harbor Terminal, Bassett Creek Valley, and Lake and Nicollet, we have advanced the city's top 3 development priorities. Let me just say that as you've heard this afternoon, our small business assistance and business lending programs make a big difference in people's lives. You heard about that this afternoon. And by the way, also in the lives of our community arts partners. And it is a great feeling to be able to hear about the difference we have made. And we know that we want to keep expanding that work to keep doing more and doing better. We have been doing more of the work to review and improve projects and keep the public safe in development services. As you heard, we just issued permits for our 8th straight year, over $1 billion of building permits. And I will note that this was a record year with $2.16 billion of permits and no stadium, and a record 4,900 residential units in the city. Those are both the highest ever. We reviewed and improved 645 land use applications for 269 projects last year. And we approved 50 accessory dwelling units, as well as 157 new 1 to 4 unit dwellings. We completely rewrote Title V of the Minneapolis Code of Ordinances to incorporate changes to the state building code. We simplified the text and we used gender-neutral language. We implemented the Truth in Sale of Housing Energy Disclosure Report to provide prospective buyers an energy score, while also giving the homeowner the most cost-effective path to increasing efficiency. We created the Building Inspector Training Program, a 200-hour internship, which will help candidates get real-world experience obtain a Minnesota building official certificate, and become eligible for building inspector positions in the future. Our building plan examiners reviewed 7,000 building permits. Our mechanical plan examiners, with assistance from mechanical inspectors, completed 1,600 mechanical reviews and 1,100 elevator reviews, and our inspectors performed nearly 100,000 inspections last year, 100,000 to keep the public safe. Our code development team is writing the text amendments which are what's next with implementing the comp plan. And we are trying an innovative staffing model which will provide enough people to do this important work on the necessary timeline while allowing for cross-training, silo busting, and preventing staff burnout. And I'll just note that since it's been in the paper in the past day or so, we've been providing a lot of feedback and input to the soon-to-open Dayton's project, a landmark building right on Nicollet Mall and the food hall downstairs, and soon to be a new destination in our city. And as we have heard about today, we have been innovating to address the affordability crisis facing our city in housing. Our housing team has been outperforming the past few years, leading on financing and production and policy development. Thanks to the mayor and council's focus and investments in this vital area, we have been able to propose updated policies, and we have recommended record investment, unit production, and increased affordability. We have invented, piloted, and refined new programs to respond to changing market conditions. Our recently compiled housing strategy names our core housing values: advance racial equity, expand opportunity, prevent displacement, prioritize resources, and develop sustainably. We implement these values with our 7 key strategies: increase supply, diversity, and affordability in all neighborhoods; produce more and preserve existing affordable rental housing with subsidies and long-term affordability requirements; preserve naturally occurring affordable housing; improve and sustain access to home ownership, especially among low-income, Black, Indigenous, and people of color residents; support renters; prevent and end homelessness; and maximize the potential of publicly owned land to meet city housing goals. In February, soon, we will publicly release a report highlighting significant progress over the last 2 years on all of these fronts. We are ahead of our Met Council affordability targets, including for very low income production, with almost 900 total units in 2019 and early 2020. That's twice the Met Council goal. The number of units that will be affordable to households with incomes at or below 30% of area median income has significantly increased, first to 115 units in 2018, and now to 193 units in 2019 and early 2020. That is nearly 5 times the average annual production of recent years, 5 times. This huge increase in new production is the result of program and policy changes and, of course, increased city investments supported by all of you. And it is also the result of partnerships intentionally curated by CPED and the city. This is a relationship business, and we are leveraging more resources than ever before for Minneapolis residents. We preserved 678 affordable rental housing units with federal subsidy in 2018 and 2019. More than 80% of these units are affordable to households with incomes at or below 30% AMI, 80%. In addition, we are innovating in NOAA preservation strategy. Our 4D affordable housing initiative is preserving housing stability for more than 700 low-income Minneapolis households by helping small, often community-based property owners keep rents affordable and make energy efficiency improvements that will reduce our carbon footprint. As you all know, with an unprecedented $20 million investment, recommended 2019 funding awards will preserve and produce more than 1,000 units of affordable rental housing. And as the mayor and council just adopted, a 2020 budget which will keep us moving forward. We have committed funding to support a tenant-led acquisition strategy to stabilize housing for 50 families. This creative program, the Small and Medium Multifamily Program, provides support necessary for renters to control their housing outcomes. whether through cooperative ownership or long-term housing stability through nonprofit housing provider. CPED staff is leading policy development for an opportunity to purchase policy, TOPA, to expand renter rights and promote housing stability. We have doubled our rate of service to BIPOC households with down payment assistance in the past few years. Doubled. We are changing the face of development in Minneapolis. Under the Minneapolis Homes program, over half our developers are BIPOC-led. This is the result of an intentional pathway we created, beginning with the Developer Technical Assistance Program and focused on the building the capacity of small, women and or BIPOC developers by providing education on the real estate process and connecting developers to opportunities to work with the city. We are providing legal representation for renters facing eviction. Between 2019 and 2020, we will serve more than 500 households. And we are working right now on funding recommendations for the Missing Middle Pilot Program, which will come to you in February. We partnered with Equity in Place, community organizations, and the City of St. Paul to develop and advance an anti-displacement strategy that shapes and informs our work. We are under contract with the University of Minnesota's Center for Urban and Regional Affairs to assist with the development of a preference policy for Minneapolis residents who are at risk of being displaced or have been displaced from their community. And just a good illustration of what we're talking about here, I think you've all heard about this as we've briefed you on the housing strategy, is the Minnehaha townhomes in Ward 12. It is now home to 53 children who had all been living in shelters. 53 children no longer in shelters. That's a site that we had assembled and then put out an RFP for this affordable housing opportunity right across the street from park and trails and near schools. And of course, as we all know, on January 1st, earlier this month, Minneapolis 2040 and permanent inclusionary zoning and triplexes everywhere all took effect, thanks to work by many across the enterprise, many of you and the team at CPED. This is the work that makes the most difference, when policymakers and staff come together to make progress on our city's biggest challenges. Our work is evolving with intentional and strong participation and input from community and stakeholder voices. We are recognized by cities around the country as leaders on housing and economic development strategy and implementation. Now, even with all the work we are doing, it can seem like we're not doing enough to address the huge challenges we face in the city. But we need to remember that the problems we're facing took generations to create and institutionalize. We need to do the policy and program and project work, and we need to do it all at the same time. CPED is working together with all of you and a multitude of community partners on all these fronts. So what's next? I look forward to continuing to do the work and doing more of it and innovating. We will keep producing loans for small businesses. We will keep producing affordable housing for all people and families who need it. We will keep reviewing and improving projects, issuing building permits, and inspecting buildings to ensure the safety of the public. You will see more program evaluations and recommendations for improvements. You will see more policy work and program development. You will see more partnerships which produce housing and jobs and opportunity for everyone in Minneapolis. And we will be innovating what we provide and how we do it. All while many of us are moving into a new building later this year, we help launch a new public service area in the building, and we make the department as great a place to work as we can. As we do our work, I want you to hear from me that one of my priorities is being intentional about ensuring that CPED staff is set up for success at work and that they can bring their full selves and talents to the table. One thing I have been working on personally since I started in this role as interim director under Mayor Hodges is the department's own racial equity work. We formed a diversity committee. It's now called the RIDE Committee, and we asked for volunteers to participate. And now 2 years in, we meet monthly with agendas and staff leadership. We have subcommittees and a SharePoint folder and minutes, and I am looking forward to the recommendations from that group about what we should be doing to make CPED an even better place for all of our staff, especially staff of color, to work. One of our department goals this year is to develop and use an overarching narrative to advance a shared understanding of our work. I hope to work with all of you to make sure that the narrative that we use reflects your view of our work and how we should move the department forward. Thank you all for the chance to speak today. Thank you, Mayor Fry, for your confidence in me. I look forward to working with all of you over the next 2 years, and I ask for your support. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Mr. Frank, for sharing that really important information about the work of the department. And we have been joined by Mayor Fry, so I just want to acknowledge that, as well as offer Councilmember Palmisano an opportunity to speak.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Just briefly, I want to thank Director Frank for being one of the most accessible people in City Hall. You certainly have a big department to run. We've had our disagreements in the past. I really appreciate your working hard on working through them and taking responsibility for things. And whether I agree or disagree with every single move that CPED makes, I do believe this is going in the right direction. I believe you have a great leadership team, and I'd like to move this item for approval, if I may.
We have a motion for approval of this item. Is there a second? We have a proper motion and a second. Is there any discussion? Mayor Fry.
Thank you, Madam Vice President. I am proud to move forward this appointment of our Director for the Department of Community Planning and Economic Development in David Frank. And the reason I'm so proud is because the work has been clear and the results and the data speaks for itself. As Councilmember Palmisano mentioned just a second ago, this department deals with tough and controversial work. It is quite large, but it is also tasked with dealing with all of the issues that get pushed under the rug by our state and federal governments. Cities are at the helm, and more specifically, it is our economic development departments that are tasked with actually dealing with these difficult issues head on. And so while Mr. Frank spoke at length about several of the accomplishments, there were a few that I really wanted to highlight directly. First, in the area of affordable housing, we have put forward record investments as the mayor and the council in 2019 and 2020 to the tune of $40 million in 2019 and $30 million in 2020. Receiving that money, managing that money, and then ultimately distributing it in a way that results in more production, not just of affordable housing, but deeply affordable housing, is not an easy task. So here's some of the results that they got. 900 affordable units produced in 2019 and early 2020, including almost 200 units below 30% of AMI in 2019 and 2020. That is more than ever before. More deeply affordable housing before. In fact, it's not one time more, not 2 times more, not 3 times more, not 4 times more. It is 5 times more affordable housing than ever before. That is not my opinion. That is a fact. Previously, when tenants were displaced because of unscrupulous landlords, the city often did not have the mechanisms at place in order to handle it. And although it's difficult and although it's controversial, we had the willingness to dive in head on. Over this last couple years, under Mr. Frank's leadership, we've stepped up. When Mahmoud Khan's management of his properties put families in danger of homelessness, we were able to provide navigation to housing for many of the families. But then we went even further and purchased 10 houses to provide stability and the opportunity for a pathway to ownership. This isn't talk. This is action. And if your argument is that we need to be doing more in the area of affordable housing, you are right. If you are saying that we are not doing enough for those who have lower incomes in our city, you are right. If you are saying that we need to be setting records not just 5 times the number, but 10 and 15 and 20 times the number, if we're ever going to truly tackle the inequities in our city, you are right. You are right. But that kind of progress that we are seeing right now, that kind of record setting in almost every single category across the board, that is progress that I believe we should be getting behind. Small business team. Joined CPED in 2019. I say joined because it just began. And in that year, they responded to 540 cases, a 30% increase from anything that had been done before the team was instituted. 460 small businesses and entrepreneurs received technical assistance from BTAP. 2.16 billion in building permits were issued and 4,400 residential units in the city were produced. Both, by the way, are records yet again. Major accomplishments in significant development, from Dayton's to Nicollet Hotel Block to a navigation center. Traditionally speaking, when individuals go through shelters, there is a 15% success rate on an annual basis. That means on an annual basis in our shelters, about 15% of the time at the end of the year, 15% of the individuals are able to find housing. With the Navigation Center, with a whole lot of help from our CPED department, that number was about 50%. 15% then, 50% through the Navigation Center, which was, again, difficult and controversial, but it was the right thing to do, and we collectively stepped up to make it happen. And honestly, it could go on forever, and there's too many more to name. But all this work, it is done with an eye for economic inclusion. It is done with an eye for righting the wrongs of the past, and it is done by a very large department. You may not have had a direct touch point with Mr. David Frank. But if you worked in the area of housing, you are likely to have touched base with Angie Skildon, or Andreda Brennan, or Katie Topinka, or Elfric Port. If you're doing small business work, there's a good chance that you are touching base with Zoe. If you were trying to figure out a really complex development deal, perhaps in the nonprofit area, there's a really good chance that you work with Jim Terrell. These are excellent people. It is an excellent organization that I am proud of. Is there more work to be done? Are we doing enough? There absolutely is more work to be done, and we aren't doing enough. But I'm proud of the progress, and we can continue with that progress together. I ask for your support.
Thank you, Mayor Fry. Our next speaker, Councilmember Ellison.
Thank you, Madam Vice President. Just had a few points that I wanted to make. I think that with all the feedback that we've heard today, there's a few things that I do want to address. But first, I want to talk about some of the things that I think aren't incremental, but that are, in fact, leaps coming out of the department. One is, as Mayor Fry mentioned, we had the opportunity to house 10 residents directly, something that the city hasn't done in maybe 40 years. 10 residents directly who are affected by, who are displaced from the Macumucan portfolio. I was happy to see some of the organizers here. To me, that's not incremental. That's a leap, right? We had the forming this last year of the Building Acquisition Fund for small businesses to purchase their buildings. That's a brand new tool that people in the department, Jim Terrell and others, felt empowered to make that recommendation to the council. And I think that speaks to good leadership. In a policy that affects a whole other department, Reg Services, we had housing staff at the table helping to form the Renter First policy. That's CPED volunteering its time, CPED staff volunteering their time that they don't have a ton of to support the work and be collaborative with other departments. And when I think about policies that are coming down the line, this concept of right to return, which is a direct recommendation of the Anti-Displacement Network, to me, those kind of policies coming down the pipeline, those are leaps, those aren't increments, right? But I also think that it's absolutely true that the pressure of displacement is outpacing the work that we can do. And I think that it's not our job to necessarily be defensive or when we hear that from community saying that we're not doing enough, but I think it's our job to understand what does it mean to lean into innovation and create and get into at a granular level, parse out what it means to be innovative and what it means to not just leap in one policy area or another, but what it means to take a huge leap as a department. And so I think that we can lean into that work, and I think that there are members of the council who are willing to lean into that work. And so I guess as a question, I just wanted to offer a question, Mr. Frank. Does that sound like something that you're willing to lean into and to, at a granular level, help the council and us develop what it means to lean into innovation and how we take a leap as a department as a whole, and make sure that the council can support you in doing that?
Madam Chair, Councilmember Ellison, yes. We look forward to doing that work. One of the things we will be working on this year, even before this conversation, is to set the right direction based on our relatively new comp plan and the recently adopted Strategic and Racial Equity Action Plan, and how our department's work is guided by those specific goals at a granular level. The answer is yes.
Well, I look forward to working on you with that. So.
Our next speaker is Council President Bender. Then we will hear from Councilmember Schrader.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I know we have a lot of folks patiently waiting to speak to us, so I want to be brief, but I also do think this is a really important time to pause and just thank the folks who came to speak today about this appointment. I think we heard the theme that I really heard most strongly was that whoever is leading this department, we have a community of folks who are really expecting more from us as leaders, from the leadership of the department, and all of us working together to bring change. And I represent a ward that's 80% renter, and I have hundreds of small businesses. Last I checked, I think it was 460 or so licensed businesses, not including all of those small businesses that aren't licensed. I was directly involved in writing the Earned Safe and Sick Time Ordinance, the minimum wage ordinance, the discussions that we had about Fair Work Week. I was on the Planning Commission for 4 of those years of $1 billion of annual investment. I authored a lot of ordinances with CPAD, including parking reform, accessory dwelling units, occupancy revisions. I was leading on the Minneapolis 2040 plan during a time where we didn't have a long-range planning director for a year. I authored the inclusionary zoning ordinance. I'm working with Councilmember Ellison on rent control, renter protections, and our renter first ordinance. I've spent a lot of time with CPAD staff, from the entry-level planners up through the director. And I agree, I think the department is filled with folks who are passionate about their work and who are excited. But I also think that we too often hear no as a first response to new and innovative ideas. I also hope in the future to see more innovation coming from within the department. Basically, a huge percent of the things that I just listed are ideas that came from community or from policymakers. And I hope as we go forward with hopefully a clear directive from the council, and I'm thankful to Councilmember Ellison and I think Schrader and others who are working on maybe articulating that in more detail. But with that clear direction, the clear direction that we're hearing from our community, to not only accelerate the pace of change, but to reorient ourselves to focus on community voices, to reorient ourselves so that when we hear innovative ideas or we hear fear of displacement, I look around my community that I represent, and I'm not sure how many people are going to be able to afford to live in the community in a year, much less 5 or 10 years. And, I think it's amazing to hear all of these things that we're doing to help the families who get the chance to live in the new affordable housing units, or the families who we were able to help transition out of the con building. But I look around and see thousands of people who are at risk of losing their homes or businesses, and I don't think we're making enough systematic change to look people in the eye and say that we're really doing all that we can to make our city a place where people can afford to live and afford to run and operate a business. And so I'm supporting Mr. Frank's reappointment because after many conversations that I'm thankful for, I believe that Mr. Frank is committed to that leadership, to bringing forward more innovation, to supporting staff, to potentially making changes within the department that would reorient us to better respond to community voices, to better center and uplift community voices so that people don't hear no, but they hear that they're invited to the table to help co-create solutions. I think that's what we're really hearing from people. We can list off our accomplishments. We can talk about numbers, but I think what I hear is that people want us to work more closely together with those small businesses, with the renters, with the folks who are facing displacement and so many challenges, to come up with solutions and create less barriers to change. So I said a lot, but those are all conversations that we've had privately. And again, I feel reassured that those values are shared, and that going forward with clear direction from the council and clear, consistent leadership here, which I also hear people saying they want to see, and I take that to heart, that we can accomplish a lot more in the next 2 years.
Thank you, President Bender. Councilmember Schrader.
Thank you, Madam Vice President. I first want to thank the director for his willingness to kind of work with council on this. Kind of want to echo a lot of the statements by Councilmember Addison. We'll be working on this, and I think for me, why this gets to be a more tough issue is because we're asking an extremely talented, extremely high-performing team to do more, and that's simply the truth of where we are right now. I think all of us up here want to do more and are very proud of the accomplishments that we've been able to do more, but we haven't yet gotten to the scope of the problem. While we're making inroads on affordable housing, we still have not solved the affordable housing crisis. We still have not, while we are leading on climate change, we still have not been able to curb our own emissions in our city. And so one of the things that I really heard loud and clear today is that while we don't have the answers here in our enterprise with all of our resources, we have a lot of folks in the community that want to help out. And I think that that's something that I will be supporting the reappointment of the director and support the work of the department. And a big part of that is a lot of the work I've seen on affordable housing. The new affordable housing strategy that I've seen, it's that kind of thing. When I first got elected, that was one of my big critiques as a former housing advocate, to see that we had accomplishments and we had a focus on making sure every income level was getting housing, and at the same time that wasn't necessarily tied to the scope of the problem and how many homes without having kind of a deadline and strategy for each level. And since that time, after a lot of hard meetings, you've come through big time. And we've really started to kind of see that movement. That movement has to continue on small businesses, on all of the other areas that we support. And we can only do that by all working together and really looking at ways we can better incorporate community voices and incorporate what folks are doing already.
Colleagues, I just want to remind us all that we do have 2 more agenda items and a committee meeting to commence after this. And next up is Councilmember Fletcher, followed by Councilmember Cunningham, Councilmember Gordon, and Councilmember Goodman.
Thank you, Chair Jenkins. I'll be short. I have been reflecting on a few things in relationship to David Frank's reappointment, and I appreciate the work that you do and that you're enthusiastic to keep doing it, David. And I also want to use this as an opportunity, because CPED's a huge organization within the city enterprise, and we've been asking for a lot of change. And there's a couple of ways that people respond to change. They either respond to change by really embracing it, and I know with a lot of the staff, the changes we're asking for are things that they've been wishing we would unleash them to do. It's actually stuff that they could see we could do, and they're meeting it with real enthusiasm. There are also people who are going to be skeptical of it and who are going to roll their eyes and say, "Oh, these council members, they're crazy. What are they doing?" And it's really important for everybody to hear the way we're talking about this work, and for the leader of CPED to really lead staff in the direction of moving with us. And so I think it's critically important that everybody hears us echoing what the community is telling us, which is we're looking for more of some of the great work that's happening. And I think that there are things that we need to recognize that are going really well. I was reflecting on this because Maeve's Cafe just closed. Mary Cassidy decided to retire from that business after a 10-year run, and I helped her get that business open. I was just as a friend and a supporter. I'd watched that process, and that process 10 years ago was awful. It was really hard, and she almost didn't get the business open. And 10 years later, the new business moving into that space, which is coming before EDRS next week, it gave me rave reviews about business licensing and about the process. And they're actually saying, like, we're actually going to get approved before we're ready because we were told this was going to be an awful process that was going to take months. And so I want to really appreciate that there are things that are getting significantly better. And there are improvements that are being made, and I want to really recognize the staff that are doing great work. The stats on affordable housing that we're creating are impressive, incredibly impressive. And when you go to a department and say, we want you to do 5 times what you're doing, and then you come back saying we did, and we're saying it's not enough, we want more, we want more, we want more. I mean, that can be a frustrating feeling, and I want to just acknowledge how much work has been happening and how much good work has been happening. The couple of things that we've been talking about that I think are really important. One is we have a challenge in recalibrating how we do engagement. There are things that CPED does that they probably over-engage on, that we ask the community a lot, and then there are things that CPED does that people really do not feel like they have a chance to weigh in on and listen to, and I think there's an opportunity for us to recalibrate what that looks like and to really think about how do we help people feel that across the whole enterprise, across the whole department, we're accountable to community, and that we're listening, and that people have an opportunity to weigh in where they have strong feelings. I know that there are ways that we can improve that, and I want to work with you on that. I also think there's room for thought leadership. I think that there are places where we actually need our CPED department to be able to advise us about what's happening. One of the reasons, and you can hear the different stats coming together to create a picture that is going to tell us that we have a problem, right? We managed to generate something like 200 units of housing at 30% AMI. Somebody making minimum wage today is at or below 30% AMI. So it is very hard to find workers who are willing to work for that because there is no housing for them. So small businesses are being crunched. When I talk to small businesses in my ward, they're not telling me, they say, the city raised the minimum wage. And I say, well, we raised it to $12. What, they say, I can't find anybody to work for less than 17. And the truth is, you have to make $17 an hour if you're going to get an apartment in the city. And so we have this mismatch between what's possible, what it costs to live here, what's happening with small businesses. And I don't think that we have a great analysis about how we're going to push through that and what answers we have. How are we going to take pressure off of small businesses? The truth is, whether you're making $20,000 or $120,000 living in this city right now, you are more debt burdened, student debt burdened, medical debt burdened, and rent burdened than you've ever been, and you're probably spending a little less going out to eat. You're probably, there are economic factors that are changing, and that's happening in every city in the country. That's not just us, but it is on us as a city to have responses to this. It is on us as a city to have proactive ideas and to be bringing forward policy that help us connect the dots between what we're doing in development and what we're doing in small business and how we're connecting. There's a reason we have planning and economic development in the same department, right? We want those things to be working together and really integrating. And so I think we have an opportunity to show a lot greater leadership there and to understand better the impact that businesses are having in our community, the impact that all of these various factors are having on each other. So I want to continue to move us in a direction where we have more data and more information to make smarter policy decisions and keep moving forward. I think we'll all continue working on it together, and I appreciate everybody who brought their feedback today.
Councilmember Gordon, and next, Councilmember Goodman.
Thank you very much, Vice President Jenkins. And I don't want to talk too long necessarily. I do just want to note that what a great discussion and what a wonderful opportunity this has turned into, and we actually have people in the community that care so deeply about this this department. I think that and council members obviously who are very engaged in what it does, and it certainly is a big department, and there's complicated goals and programs and things that are operating in there. I'm supporting the reappointment of the director, as I did at executive committee, for many reasons, but some of the reasons have to do with the energy, the attention. We have a CPED director now, and this hasn't always been the case, who shows up and who's present, who's fully engaged, who's energized, who's passionate about the work, who wants to empower staff and is open and looking for direction and guidance from policymakers about what to do next, and it just makes an enormous difference. We heard kind of an array of concerns about the challenges the city is facing and about things we should be doing differently. And quite honestly, I just also want to make the point that a lot of those things shouldn't fall on the department head's shoulders. It's the policymakers' responsibility to take care of those things, to set those priorities, and to make those things a big issue. I think a lot of the things that people spoke about today are things that we care deeply about here. They're things that CPED staff cares deeply about. And we all want to get there, and we want to do that. I think one thing that we might be able to do with this opportunity is use it to articulate some of those things that we've heard today, some of the values maybe we heard today, some of the values that the council shares and that the leadership at CPED share, and maybe we can come back Friday and articulate some of those so we can see them on the same page. Other things we're going to have to very much dig into. I 100% agree that we are changing course as a city in terms of how we think this works. When everybody was leaving the city, we were desperate from employers to come here and employ people and anybody to develop here. Somebody made the comment about doing market facilitation, and now it's time to do market intervention. I think we've felt that and we've noticed that a long way, is how can we play the role now to guide and manage this growth and development and intensity so that we're benefiting, especially the people who currently live in the city of Minneapolis are seeing those rewards and those benefits. I look forward to doing that. I think we have an opportunity maybe to bring something forward on Friday that will articulate some of those things, and I just want to tell my colleagues I'm willing to work on it and help with those things moving forward. And then I'm proud and delighted to be able to roll up my sleeves and work with our community planning and economic development staff as long as I'm here to realize our best hopes and dreams for the city of Minneapolis.
Councilmember Goodman.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I have a whole page of notes, so I'm not going to say I'm going to be brief, but I might be. I want to thank everyone who came today to speak, and I want to thank all my colleagues for your very thoughtful and respectful comments. That is meaningful to everyone in the department. I want to start by telling you a story of something that happened to me over the weekend. 2 years ago, a small business that had 2 employees, a husband and wife, I read in the paper was being forced to close due to displacement on Washington Avenue. A building that had been sold, and this small business had already been kicked out of art and architecture, so they moved to Washington Avenue. And then that building was sold due to the death of the property owner, and they were given 3 weeks' notice to vacate. I read that in the paper, and so I called them because I had been a customer in the past, and I said to the woman on the phone, "You don't know me, but I'm a city council member, but you're not even in my district anymore, but you used to be, and I used to be a customer of yours, and I just want you to know I'm worried about you. Would you mind if I sent Zoe from the small business team to your business to see if there's something we could do?" And she started crying on the phone and said, "I've never had a call like this before. I never thought government would do anything for me. If there's something you could do, that would be great, but I'm not really believing you can because we have to be out of the space in 3 weeks and we don't even have the money to move, more or less, store all of our fixtures, and we have no ability to find a new place. This weekend, I needed a new fixture in my house, and I wanted to buy local, and so I looked up on my iPad where this business was located, praying they were still in business, and they were. They are on Winter Street in northeast Minneapolis, and I went up there. And I came in and I said, you don't know me, I'm a customer of yours. And she gave me the biggest hug. And she told me that as the result of Zoe and the small business team, they were able to get a loan through MCCD, which is one of our nonprofit development partners, that paid for the working capital they needed to move their business in 3 weeks. Because of Zoe, they were able to find a space. Because of Zoe, they were able to secure a partnership and get a loan. And because of the work of our small business team and Zoe's work, they were operating currently. Ironically, they're in a better space, in an area where others are like them. Their business is very common business. There's actually like a rock poster shop in the building next to them and a few other really cool things that are happening. And they still have 2 employees, the husband and the wife, and they're in their 60s, and who knows how much longer they'll be in business. They live in the Howe neighborhood, so they are in the 11th Ward. They love their council member. They love their city. And they were shocked that government was willing to step up and help them. I would guess that for every one person of you that hears a story like this, you would hear 10 more if you knew who the businesses were that have been helped by the 2% loan program, or any of the business development programs that have happened to train people who want to be involved in economic development, want to start a business, want to become a developer, because we've trained over 460 people in this area just in the past 2 years. And when the Drake Hotel burned down in the ward that I represent, my immediate reaction was nothing like this will ever be built again, except for due to the work of Angie Skildum and the good work of Catholic Charities. The city is partnering with Hennepin County and others to build something very much like the Drake Hotel at the Augustana Care Home right now. And because of the work of Angie Skildum, we figured out that we normally fund affordable housing, but we don't really do SRO, and we're not sure how we would fund that. We're not sure if we even like that. But Angie determined that that was a need, not knowing that the Drake would burn down, but because of her passion for housing and housing the poorest of the poor, people at 30% or lower of the metro-wide median income. And as a result of that, the city is a partner with a number of other partners on building 250 really desperately needed low-income housing units in Elliott Park downtown. And as a result of the work of Deb Barhelgen, more students were signed up for Step Up this year than any other year in the past. It's become an enduring program over a 15-year period that has far outlasted the current mayor, but has incredible support from the current mayor. Hundreds, 400 and some odd people have been trained through Tech Hire, and we are seen as a city, as a place of innovation for helping people of color and women get job training so that they can be successful in not just having a minimum wage job, but a living wage job in our community. We have been, I think, responsive to the fact that things are changing. We've done a lot more work as a result of the leadership of my colleagues on many very important renters' rights initiatives. I myself was very skeptical of the inclusionary zoning idea, but due to the hard work of Councilmember Bender, I was convinced that it was something we should be doing. And in fact, I mentioned to her yesterday, there's a project happening in my ward that was happening, and they had to rejigger it. And I said, well, you're going to have to put in inclusionary housing. And you know what they said? We'd be happy to. That's part of contributing to the city. So people are not fleeing. Unique things are happening, and they're happening because of a whole bunch of individuals in the department who could have better jobs working for big developers, nonprofit housing builders, and all sorts of people working in the community, but they work at the city because they share our values and they share the values of all of the people in this room. I remember a time when on the Minneapolis City Council where basically corporate welfare was the norm. Corporate welfare was the norm. Building ballparks and football stadiums and allowing surface parking lots downtown was the way, building Block E, was the way we did business in the Economic Development Division of the City of Minneapolis. And so if you think about how far we've come in a fairly short period of time, I would ask us to be vigilant and patient in knowing that we will be able to do many of the things that everyone wants to see. But shifting the Titanic is not something that happens overnight. And every year that we're able to make progress, it builds on other progress. I have had the good fortune to work with 6 people as chair of the CPED division. David Frank, in my opinion, is one of the most transparent and honest people that I've had the good fortune to work with. He has through the evaluation that we actually did of his performance, and we do an official job performance evaluation of all department heads every year, council members Gordon, Schrader, and I and the mayor sat through the feedback from outside stakeholders, community participants, and employees of the department, and we heard nothing less than positive reviews, especially in the area of staff development, where our staff really feel very supported by Mr. Frank, and they believe that he has their best interests at heart, and they believe that he has the city's best interests in heart. He certainly could go on and have a job far greater than the one he has, but he cares about social justice, and he cares about the things he heard in this room, and that's why he's doing this work. So I would ask us to just, in a way, be patient. Sometimes no is the answer, sometimes not now is the answer, and sometimes we have to do it immediately is the answer. There's a reason for every one of those answers. I don't want a director who's going to yes me and then not do something. I rather hear no, if that's actually the truth. And in the end, I think that there are a lot of people on the council and in the community who share the common good of helping those that need it the most, of making sure that the city intervenes where the market has not, and moving our community forward is one in which we have incredible shared goals. So I am thrilled, actually, that Mr. Frank is willing to stay, a strong supporter of his appointment to continue as the executive director of PED, and I hope that you will be able to communicate to your staff that we're not here today, and those that are here today that we have the good fortune to work with, that we believe in what you're doing, and if we want you to do more, we should resource you to do more, and we should support the work that you're doing as you march on this path that the community has set for us to have equitable and fair economic development in our community.
Thank you, Councilmember Goodman. Seeing no one else in queue to speak, I will call the question. All those in favor of the motion say aye. Any opposed say nay. And that item carries. Discussion item number 2 is a presentation and a resolution related to the 2020 census. And I want to thank census staff for sitting through this long public hearing, but invite you up to present to the council about one of the most important items that we do every 10 years. And just before this meeting, we had a press conference to unveil the new artwork, which Director Rubador is wearing about the census that was designed by Ricardo Levins Morales, and it will be presented to the community at our Community Connections Conference this coming weekend. Welcome, Mr. Rubador.
Chair Jenkins and committee members, good afternoon. I'm David Rubador, Director of the Neighborhood and Community Relations Department, and I'm proud to be wearing the T-shirt that the Council Vice President just mentioned, which will be unveiled at our Community Connections Conference this coming up Saturday. I'm going to just do a kind of a brief introduction around the census, but I'm joined by Karen Moe from NCR, as well as Alberta Gillespie, who will be going over the census work in more detail with you today. But I did want to spend a little time right at the beginning just to provide a little context to the census and why it's so important for our city to get this correct. First of all, the requested action for you today, this is really a receive and file. It's an update on the work that's underway, and just to be able to give you the information about what is happening. So the action being requested is a receive and file. So first of all, I want to spend a couple of minutes just really kind of talking about why the census is important. And I'll keep my comments brief. I know it's been a long day already, so I'll try to keep moving. But it is the census is actually a major equity issue for our city in making sure that every voice and every person is counted. As you know, the census is done every decade, so every 10 years it is completed. And this year it'll be done on April 1st. It is important that we actually get this number correct because it really represents a very significant number that's really kind of setting the basis for our community and resources that we will get over the next 10 years. It directly reflects into political representation and fair representation of our community, and it also directly impacts the amount of money and funding that we get from the federal government. I'm going to dive into those just in a little bit more detail. First of all, regarding the political representation, all the basically political boundaries are drawn by the census, and so it's really important we get that number correct. So council districts, school board, park board, legislative districts on the state level, but on the federal level, it's also how the House of Representatives is apportioned across the United States. There are a set number of seats within the House, and each state gets a certain number based on population. Minnesota currently has 8, and we are at a risk of actually going down to 7. In 2010, when we had the census done, we were right at the cusp of actually being cut off from going from 8 to 7, which is a significant drop in our representation on the federal level. We are still very much at risk of losing that seat. In fact, we are likely to lose that seat. But a good complete count will ensure if we have the fair right to be able to continue to have 8 representatives in the House. And so that's a very significant issue. The other piece around this is funding allocation. The census is data that's used for federal government distributing lots of resources out, everything from housing to roads to schools, and I'll circle back to this in a minute, but a lot of that is based on the census numbers itself. So why is this an equity issue? In that a lot of people are at risk of being undercounted in the census. We're talking specifically communities of color, renters, half of our city, a little over half of our city are renters, students, young children, seniors, immigrants and refugees, as well as racial and ethnic minorities as well. So there's a number of people that are undercounted by at risk of being undercounted by the census. And it takes a special work in order to really make sure that we reach everybody that we're able to count them. But giving you an idea of the risk that actually poses for us is the Census Bureau does an estimate based on those populations and what they estimate currently exists in our city. If we did nothing on the local level, how many people would we be undercounted by? And the Census Bureau estimates that Minneapolis, based on those hard to count folks or those undercounted communities, we're at risk of being almost 96,000 people undercounted. So when you think about our city right now is around 420,000 people, and if the Census Bureau itself just kind of went out and did the census and we did nothing here, and we missed 96,000 people, that's over 20% of the population of our city, or close to 20%. So when you equate that on a numerical number, the federal government allocates out about $2,800 per year per person. So you take $2,800 per year per person times 96,000 people over a 10-year period, that's $2.7 billion, just shy of $2.7 billion worth of federal financial resources that would be we would be eligible on our city level that would not be coming to our city if we were undercounted by that amount. And so this is very significant. The very groups that are typically undercounted are usually the recipients of those funds that are coming from the federal government. So there's actually a bit of an irony in there as well. The most undercounted group in the United States are children under 5 years of age, which is really an interesting fact. It affects every community in the city. It is not just communities of color. It's not renters. It's not just immigrants and refugees. Every community in the city is affected by the risk of being undercounted because children under 5 are the most undercounted group. And to put that in a little bit in perspective, a child that is 5 years old today that is missed in the census, that census information would be used for WIC programs. It would be used for like school lunch programs. That child will be 15 years old before they're counted again in the census. That's a decade's worth of resources while that child is going through school that we would lose if we didn't get it. And that's just one example of why this is really important and why this is a big equity issue. So with that, I would like to invite to the podium Karen Moe, the Deputy Director at NCR, to really talk about some of the strategies that we're employing. Then she will be followed by Alberta Gillespie to go through some of the real specific details of work that's underway.
Thank you, Mr. Rubador, and that is a snappy T-shirt you're wearing.
Good afternoon, City Council. My name is Karen Moe. I'm Deputy Director of Neighborhood and Community Relations. I'm going to ground us first in a little bit of our approach towards this work. So when we came first to you over a year ago, we talked about this being a campaign that we had set up. And with that, we have the, as Alberta refers to it, the GOTC, the Get Out the Census count is what we're doing. When we first came to you, we talked about how we broke it down into 3 real buckets. If you think about a campaign, first we really need to do education and awareness. That's what we have been doing up until now. We now are moving into the promotion and mobilization stage, and that's really where what we're hoping is that the relationships and all the work that we have been doing is now going to start to pay off in terms of actually being able to mobilize the folks that we've been working with. And we're going to have a couple examples of some things that are being released, such as the image and some other actions that the city is going to be taking that's a result of that. With that, just a reminder and maybe a little bit update. The census day itself is April 1st. That's really what we focused on. But a reminder that households will begin receiving postcards from the U.S. Census Bureau in March. And that people can start actually taking the census March 12th. That's what we expect when it will officially be open. So the work really does start sooner than April 1st. But, and that's really the focus for our work. And then there's the cleanup period, and that's after April 1st through July will really be the targeted outreach to the folks that we think have not completed the census already. As we've talked about when we've been here before, given the landscape of the 2020 census work and the resources or the lack of resources and support, we really thought about how we had to take a strategic approach towards this in terms of really looking at what relationships internally across the city we could leverage, as well as the relationships in our community and making sure that we were strategic in how we focus those efforts to really focus on the historically undercounted communities. We also, you'll remember, as we've come here before, really wanted to focus on this being a community-led effort. That it was what we were hearing from the national level and from the state level and the local level, and that continues to play out in the conversations and the work that we're doing. With the resources that were available, we also recognized that we really needed to be smart about how we were leveraging resources already in place. So while you, City Council, did dedicate resources to this, we also were not sure what the federal or the state or the county was going to come in at, and so we really have tried to be strategic about leveraging the resources that we already have in place. I'm going to focus internally first on the city. For those of you visiting us, we'd like to refer to ourselves as the enterprise here. You know that we have a city staff team meeting that is made up of folks from communications, the elections department, creative city making, information technology, intergovernment relations, regulatory services, civil rights coordinator's office, and community planning and economic development. We come together on a monthly basis to talk about things like what resources do we already have in place that we can leverage in order to do this work. I do want to acknowledge that we have some added capacity specifically focused on census activities. I really want to call out our partner departments in this. The communications department hired Chelsea McFerrin, who is a digital and social media communications specialist. She is focused just on the census, and that really did come out of the census budget that you all passed. She is promoting all of the digital and social media, so you probably will be seeing more of that as we move into this period of the work. In addition to that, the city clerk's office had a position available to do elections engagement specialist work, and they were able to expand that position to include the work on the census as well. So Katie Maurer has joined the city clerk's office, but really is focusing part of her effort on the census as well. A couple of results of these relationships I just want to highlight, and these are really just a couple, we heard a lot today about our renter population, and I know there's a resolution that's going to be coming forth council today, reinforcing that there is already federal statute that does allow census workers access to buildings in order to get a count. We wanted to also reinforce this message through an educational approach, and so we worked with Regulatory Services, who has an annual mailing to all rental property owners and managers. Approximately 24,000 letters were sent out in January, one to per rental license, and that included this handout here. You all have a copy of it. And this was just a friendly reminder or education component to our rental property owners that federal statute already exists and that they are required to let U.S. Census workers access to their buildings. In addition to that, we worked with our partners in utility billing and have included a mailing regarding the census in the December mailing as well. We're going to include one in March, reminding all of those folks that get the utility bill that the census is coming. Elections, again, they have a mailing going out to all Minneapolis households regarding the 2020 election season, and we've been working with them to make sure we get information about the census in that, and that should be reaching all of our Minneapolis households. In addition to that, you know because you put it in there, but I know because I receive your newsletters and I see how much all of you have been promoting the census, so we appreciate that as well. That is another example of leveraging internal relationships or avenues that already exist. Moving externally, talking about our community partners, we have the Complete Count Committee, which we've established and meets on a monthly basis. We also have been spending quite a bit of time with our community partners, particularly focusing on those that are in our historically undercounted communities and working with them to better understand the census and understand how to get involved in the census. We also have been working with our neighborhood associations to raise awareness with them about the census and elections, as well as asking them to think about how they can use their relationships to promote the work of the census. And then we have been providing support to our community partners to apply for or access resources available outside of the city. To go a little bit further in depth on this, again, these are just a couple of the examples in terms of our partnerships with community members you see here. We have been very intentional about our relationship with the State of Minnesota Demographer's Office, Hennepin County. City of Minneapolis is one of the leaders of the local government roundtable that includes the 7 metro area government entities coming together on a regular basis. The City of St. Paul is one of our partners in this work. A couple of our community partners would include Children's Minnesota Hospital, PICA Head Start, AARP, the Minneapolis Urban League, the Minneapolis Urban Indian Complete Count Committee, neighborhood associations, and multiple faith institutions. I want to highlight one activity. Director David Rubidor, along with Casey Carl, City Clerk, reached out to all 70 neighborhood associations and asked to come and present on both the census and the 2020 election season. To date, they have attended 39 neighborhood organizations and presented to those. We have 18 scheduled, and then the remaining we'll see. Moving into highlighted future activities, I'm going to let Alberta talk about a couple of them, but one that I really did want to highlight is the fact that we have our annual Community Connections Conference this Saturday, February 1st, 9 to 4 at the Minneapolis Convention Center. And we chose the theme We Count this year, and that really was to, again, further and deepen the work around the census. So you know that the theme of this year's census at the state level is We Count. We've really adopted that and moved it forward. Along with the theme, we have a whole census experience. This includes the Civil Rights Department has built interactive experience where you can go and actually walk through what it feels like to complete the census as well as learn more about it. The creative city making artists, Anna and Rox, will be there collecting personal We Count stories as well as sharing some of the We Count stories from members of their community and others. The U.S. Census Bureau will be there promoting jobs and answering questions about the census. The Minneapolis Complete Count Committee will be there answering questions, as well as other artists that will be involved and have a presence there. I'm going to just touch on this image here, but actually let Alberta talk more about how this image came to be and the meaning of it. But this was done by Ricardo Levins Morales, who is a Minneapolis-based artist, and he actually will be at the conference from 11:30 a.m. to 1:30 p.m. signing posters. Everyone that attends will receive one poster of this image. In addition to that, we have multiple workshops both in the morning and the afternoon focused on the census. With that, I'm going to turn it over to Alberta.
Thank you, Ms. Moe. And before you begin, Ms. Gillespie, we have a question from Councilmember Cunningham.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I saw that there were a number of neighborhoods that were not highlighted, and so 2 of them were mine. So I, as the council member, extend myself to be a resource to be able to connect with those neighborhoods so that we can get the outreach, given that we really want to make sure we get North Minneapolis counted. So count on me.
Good afternoon, Chair Jenkins and
Welcome.
Committee members. I'm going to be really, really brief, but the first thing I do want to talk about is the image that we have, the We Count image, and that we unveiled earlier today. I'm really excited about it, and I want to say this is a result of when community and government or the city come together and work. And so this came out of what we were hearing from community. So as we were going out talking to community members, they wanted something that reflected them and really reflected this We Count theme. What does it mean to say we all are valued? We all are here. We all add value. And so through the creative city making team and the relationship that we have with artists, we were able to work with Ricardo Levins Morales. His relationship is actually with the artists who are part of the team, the creative city making team, to really come up with an image that reflects what the We Count thing means. And so we're really excited about that. We hope this becomes more of a movement. I believe in a good movement. So, and getting people to really kind of personalize what it means to be a part of the census. And so it's not that sterile image that we often get. We want to make sure that things are relevant and real to people. And this is really going to be instrumental in us communicating that in a very visual way. So excited about that. The other thing, I think there have been a number of things that have been highlighted, and I'll just talk a little bit about our approach to really making sure that we are doing the grassroots things that will get people counted, because, the partnerships are wonderful. It's great to have this beautiful image that I think really is going to be inviting and inclusive. But at the end of the day, our goal is to make sure that people complete the census. And one of the key components of that is our Trusted Spaces, Trusted Faces program. And for short, we're going to say Trusted Spaces. But it's these places where we are creating space, or where space currently exists for community members to actually go in and complete the census questionnaire. The Census Bureau has what they call QACs, which are Question Assistance Centers. Those are not necessarily as welcoming as we would like them to be, and the name of them don't say come in and complete the census. So what we've decided to do, and we talked a little bit about that, is that we are helping community organizations and churches and mosques, synagogues, whoever want to do this, partner with us to actually have the technology available so that in the next, we got about 65 days, people can actually go to those spaces that they trust people, and they can actually complete the census. One of the primary things that we've heard throughout this work is that I don't want to put my information into a random computer, or I don't want to use my home computer. We also know that some people don't have. There's a computer. There's still a digital divide. And so we know that there are still language barriers that exist. So this is going to be one of our key components in terms of overcoming that. We've worked closely with IT in terms of the technology that we need. Our challenge right now is that we probably have more requests than we can fill, and I think that's a great challenge to have, is that community wants to partner with the city on this particular issue. And I think that's powerful from a city perspective, that our residents are saying, we trust you to help us with this piece, and that they really have the message of this is important. that they know that, they believe that, and they've reacted to that, or responded to that. So that's one of the primary things. I also want to quickly just say, if you don't know, on January 21st, the census actually began. So, in some small town in Alaska, the first person actually went through the enumeration process. So it's exciting. They start there because the ground is still frozen in Alaska, and once it thaws, there are places that you cannot get into. So the census has started in Alaska. I was like, come to Minnesota. No, we're not far from it, right? So the other thing is that one of the pieces that was important to having a good census count is really having people that reflect community from a recruitment standpoint. And I want to say that the city of Minneapolis has worked extremely hard to get information out regarding the jobs with the Census Bureau, because we want people who are from community going into community to knock on doors and gather this information. You may have read some of the reports in the newspapers about the difficulty initially getting people to actually apply for the census jobs, and for the state of Minnesota that we needed approximately 8,000 applicants. I am pleased to report that for Hennepin County in Minneapolis, as of this morning, we reached 100% of the goal of applicants. So I do. I know. And that's really, I attribute that to the work I think that the city has done, the early investment, all of the collaborations throughout the enterprise, but also with community members to make sure that we were constantly promoting these opportunities wherever we went. So congratulations to us on that. And more importantly, it's going to have an impact on getting a fair, complete, and accurate count. The offices.
I just want to pause for 1 minute, because, I mean, I think that's a really important milestone that we have reached, and for all of us who care about equity, who care about building strong communities, who care about improving our infrastructure, getting the count out is an incredibly important activity for everybody in this city to be engaged in. So I just want to acknowledge that milestone and thank you and all the team in NCR and the Complete Count Committee on those efforts.
Thank you for that. And I will say this, hearing that this morning was encouraging, because if we helped overcome, there were some obstacles around getting those applications, and together with our work and collaborating with community, we were able to overcome that. It also means that we can make sure that those 95,942 people that are predicted not to complete the census, that we can overcome that as well. So offices have been opened in the state of Minnesota. The U.S. Census Bureau has opened up 3 offices, one in Minneapolis, one in Duluth, and one in, where's the other? Rochester. And so the Minneapolis office is going to service all of Hennepin County. In 2010, there were actually 5 offices, so we do have a reduced number compared to 2010. You should also start seeing paid advertising from the Census Bureau, because those ads were actually launched this month. And then also from a city perspective, we have 7 community public service announcements that we have also, the communications department worked extremely hard on, and we have launched, and we think they're great. We hope you continue to promote those. Those came as a result of community members saying, we don't want an ad just from the federal government. We want to see people from community talking about why this is important to community. So as a result, these ads were created. And then finally, I'll just talk just really briefly about the apartment access piece, is that I know that some of you may have received questions about that, but I just want to reiterate, there is a law that currently exists, a federal law, that says that access has to be given to enumerators when they come and knock on the door. And so our strategy has been to really highlight and illuminate that, and then work collaboratively with property managers and building residents as well to talk about why they need to complete the census, and then for the property managers that it's legally they have to allow enumerators in so that folks can complete the census. Because property managers, and we all benefit from accurate information. We all benefit from a complete count. So I think in the previous 2010 census, there wasn't a lot of emphasis put on that. And so we think by putting emphasis on that and making people aware, we will get compliance. So that concludes this presentation, and I stand for your questions.
Thank you, Ms. Gillespie. Are there any questions? Seeing none, I just want to state, I was honored when NCR asked me to be the project sponsor for 2020 census, and really proud to work with our colleagues in St. Paul, including Councilmember Mitra, and then at the county with Commissioner Irene Fernando. And so just want to say congratulations on all this work. I'm looking forward to the Community Connections Conference, which will be deeply focused on the census and really educating and activating our community to be a big part of this. So thank you for that presentation.
Thank you.
And with that, I will move approval of item number 2, which includes receiving and filing the update and approving the resolution related to access to multi-unit structures. Is there any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed say nay, and that item carries. And colleagues, the next item is an addendum item number 3, related to public comments regarding the Hiawatha Maintenance Facility campus expansion. And I, as the chair, am allowing 20 minutes to this item, a time of 2 minutes per person. I will note for my colleagues that we are not taking any action on this project today. We are simply providing an opportunity for residents to be heard, to speak to new information related to this project area that that they believe may have some interest and impact to this body. And please, for anyone hoping to speak today, sign in with the clerk. And if there is no one signed in to speak, we will allow you to speak, but ask that you please sign in with the clerk after. And it looks like former Senator Linda Berglund, did you want to speak first, or? I'm going to lead it off, but I'm going to sign in now. Wonderful. Welcome, and thank you for sitting through. So we have a total of 20 minutes. So if you have an 8-minute presentation, that will leave 12 minutes for other members to speak. And if people are comfortable with that, absolutely.
Bonjour. I don't know who said that. Who? Oh, bonjour.
Can you please state your name and address for the record?
My name is Cassandra Holmes, and I live at Little Earth of United Tribes. I'm not sure what would be the best way to show this. I don't know if you guys all seen this map. The council, have you guys all seen this?
No, I can't speak for everybody. I'm not familiar with this map.
So I'm going to ask that it be put where you guys could see it as well. I don't know how this works, though. So is this in? It says it's in, so I just want to make sure that.
Mr. Clerk, is there anyone that can assist with this presentation?
I got it. Thank you. Yeah, thank you. Okay. So first of all, my name is Cassandra. Hello, my relatives. I am a resident of Little Earth, and I do want to thank you, Councilmember Jenkins, for allowing us to come and present this. Thank you guys for staying out here and listening to this presentation. I know a lot of you guys heard this before, and we do have a little bit of new information that we wanted to add to what I was talking about when we talked about the Roof Depot site and the East Phillips Indoor Urban Farm. I do have notes, so I'm going to apologize ahead of time if I'm not looking directly at you guys and giving you eye contact. And this is to check me, so I don't go on and on and on. So we have a map here, and this map was created in 2008 based on the census per population. And the importance of this map is it's going to show the disproportionate impact of environmental toxic exposure to low-income people of color, indigenous people in the communities. What you see on that map is a picture of Hennepin County. And if you notice the different colors, it's the darker the color, the more people of color in that area. And on the lower part of that map, on the left lower part, that is specifically East Phillips neighborhood. A little bit further up from the East Phillips neighborhood, when we start to flip, you'll see, is the north side. So the first thing you see here, and it's kind of hard to see, is you'll see the arsenic that was taken out of the East Phillips neighborhood. East Phillips was declared the first residential environmental Superfund site in the country because of the dangerous amounts of arsenic in our soil. 500 homes had their dirt scooped up by people wearing white suits for protection because of how dangerous the amounts of the arsenic that was there. You can't really see the dots, but as we turn, there's 500 homes. The second one focuses on asthma. The asthma this data comes from is the Minnesota Department of Health, the Minneapolis Department of Health, and the Minnesota Hospital Association. And what this data shows here is that these are the people that required hospitalization due to asthma. And if you can see there's East Phillips and Northside. So we all share this in common when it comes to the asthma. The next one that shows is lead. Lead shows, the data you're seeing here is the documentation of children who had childhood lead poisoning and who needed hospitalization or intervention. You're starting to see a theme here. It's all congested to this area. And it's not because of there's more people living there. This is per population. So it's just showing the toxic impact in these communities of people of color, low income, indigenous people. So the next one, which is new to this, is heart attacks. This is documentation from the Minnesota Department of Health and the disproportionate number of heart disease in our community. The next one will be stroke, and again, just the disproportionate. You can see all of that is Hennepin County, the Minneapolis area, and it's just focused in the East Phillips, a little bit around our surrounding communities in the north side. The next one is traffic, and I really wish you could see that one better because there's 4 different lines on there, 4 different colors that represent how much traffic that goes through the whole Hennepin County, and then it focuses on the East Phillips area. There's a red mark in there, if you can see it, the biggest color, and that's 100,000 plus per day of vehicles that are in and out of our community. And it's more congested in the East Phillips neighborhood than anywhere else on that map. The reason why I wanted to show you that map is because let me go back to the transportation. Traffic and mobile sources are the #1 causes of asthma for people in our community, and asthma is the #1 reason why children miss school. So you start to see this vicious cycle happening here. The reason why I think it's important for everybody to see this map is because it really gives you a picture of what environmental injustices and what environmental racism looks like. That's it right there. That's East Phillips and that's Northside. And that's where all of everything all the bad pollution and everything, the arsenic, the lead, the transportation is all in our community there. So, moving forward, I do want to go just to mention, Karen wish she could be here, but she is in surgery. So I just want to recognize Karen in that, otherwise she would be here. We're going to move to a law because of the facts you've seen that East Phillips has a law that came out called the Clark-Berglund Environmental Justice Law. I do know that Senator Berglund is here. She's also the co-author of this environmental justice law, and I know that she'll be able to add more feedback on this. I'm just going to point out a few things, and then she can add more feedback at the end of the presentation. This law is one of a kind. It's very much needed in our overburdened community, and it remains a national model. It shows the law helps with a much stricter standard of pollution allowed because of the pollution already burdening our community. And it holds all sources, not just some, all sources of pollution to a higher standard. These pictures that you see here are pictures that are real close, that are right by the Little Earth community called the Arsenic Triangle. This is one of the pictures of our land right there that's by homes in the East Phillips community. Here's another picture of our greenway that's of bikers passing right by what we call the Smith Foundry and the bituminous roadways. Here's the Smith Foundry. And then here's another part of our greenway that where our bikers have to pass through with all the traffic, trucks, diesel trucks, and everything else that's going on. And part of this information that we got, and this is the new information that we're presenting, is called the Health Impact Assessment, HIA for short. This health impact assessment, this one is 104 pages long, and then we also have an executive summary that I'd be willing to make sure that you guys all get. The HIA was done in the East Phillips community because of the many sources of environmental trauma, injustices in our community. There's the 104-page in the executive summary, and they focus on recommendations that are tailored to the city, that focuses on Phillips and the racial disparity. There were 6 community organizations that participated in this using taxpayers' dollars. And those organizations are Nexus, the Waite House, Isaroon, Hope Community, Land Stewardship Project, and SEED, the Center for Earth, Energy, and Democracy. This HIA had come with some recommendations. And unfortunately, I think some of you, as well as a lot of us, didn't even know that the HIA existed. It took us a long time to get this. It should have been published, and it hasn't been. At least I don't think it has been. So, sorry, I have to look at my notes here. But the recommendations that came out of the HIA, and there are many, but I will name a few that are really, really important, are the cumulative impacts. The city should discourage and advocate against development or redevelopment that will contribute to pollute in areas deemed disproportionately burdened communities. Transportation pollution, reduce traffic. That's how simple that is, just reduce traffic. Green investment, climate resiliency, comprehensive air quality assessment. There's so much more in here to talk about, but I just wanted to highlight a few. What also came out of the HIA is called green zones. The green zones from, sorry, I have to get on my notes here. Okay, the green zone was resolved by the city, and they also have goals. The city council also had goals that had to do with the green zone, and I'm just going to share some of those. To achieve racial equity, prevent gentrification, support economic development, and to strengthen the health of communities that face cumulative impacts of environmental pollution, social, political, and economic vulnerability. The green zone will include community-led planning, prioritization of homegrown development, and community ownership of the Green Zone Initiative that are innovative, creative, courageous, flexible, and adaptive. That is from your very own Green Zone resolution. When we started out, the community started out with our plan and the Roof Depot site. We started out with 7 acres. But when the city threatened eminent domain, we went down to 3 acres. From 3 acres, we went down to 2. And we realized that we were compromising not just land and not just money, but our people and their lives and their health. But we know that we had to work with the city and with Public Works. I do want to say Sorry, I'm missing something here. I'm going to go back to the 3-acre plan because that's what we're going to talk about real quick. In this 3-acre plan, we have low-income housing, 28 two-bedroom apartments with individual gardens. We have solar paneling and indoor aquaponics. If you look to the right side, that little part there, that is the low-end aquaponics, and the right side here, the long building, would be the high-end aquaponics with the apartments on top. We had planned for a community kitchen and a youth-led coffee shop where community members can come and sell or show their crafts and their artwork. And we have a very diverse community, and that would have been open to all. We have a bike repair shop on the Greenway. This would have created green jobs, green education, green job training, and this plan would have helped our community now and years to come. I do want to talk about that with the help of Karen Clark and others, we were able to get state funds of $319,000. And that money was to help our community in moving forward with this plan. Some of the money that was used was in the architect that you just seen in those buildings. And then some of the money was given out to the different organizations and the communities in our East Phillips community. And I'll speak for Little Earth. This is a picture of Little Earth right here. This is a picture of our kids, and what we did was we provided jobs for ages 6 years and up for youth to work, to get paid. We take them shopping, we buy them clothes and all their school supplies. This right here was a stepping stone to the bigger plan and the bigger ideal to the indoor aquaponics to keep the jobs going in green. This right here is some of our food that came from the Little Earth Garden. This right here is one of our youth. He was so happy that he actually got to learn how to plant stuff, to grow stuff, and watch it grow, and then pull it and eat it. And he was eating stuff. This is his mother right here. He's eating stuff that he probably wouldn't have ate until he joined this. So, we have always acknowledged in our community that we have to work with Public Works. But like I said, we don't want to, and we're willing to work with them, but not when it means that we have to accept their plans that will add to the pollution in our community that we're already severely suffering from. One of the misleading statements of this project is the questions of, well, do you want clean air or do you want clean water? Why do we have to choose? That was asked of me and to other people. I just want to put it on the record that Public Works plan has nothing to do with our water. It will not change it. It will not filter it. It will not sparkle. It will not get worse. It will not get better. Nothing will change with the water in their plan. Another question that was asked was, well, don't you want jobs? Yeah, we want jobs, but we want jobs that we can be happy to have, that we can take pride in and knowing that our kids are not at home being poisoned. And we want to make sure that the jobs that are created ain't going to create more damage to our people in the future and their health. What I do know Public Works' plan is that they want to tear down the Roof Depot building. The Roof Depot building safely encapsulates the arsenic that is still there. If you guys tear that down, if that's allowed to be tear down, I cannot imagine. Sorry. Another thing that they plan on doing is building a parking ramp for 400 plus cars. And these are for employees coming from the outside, not for us. They want more parking space for more diesel trucks, and they want to have storage for manhole covers, pipes, voting equipment, salt and sand mix, and asphalt hot mix. And they want to have a sand lot. The sand lot will train, it's an indoor, and it will train employees on how to operate diesel equipment. And they said, but don't worry, we'll have a filter. That will be filtered out so nobody will be hurt. But they're going to filter it out to us. They're also going to have a building for teaching, and we do know that the community will have minimal use for that. And I want you to remember that while all this planning is going on for that, we still have the Smith Foundry and Bituminous Roadway right there. I will say, on a personal note, as a community member, as a mother who lost a child, my son was 14 years old and was diagnosed with a heart disease. We know that heart disease happened from all the pollution in our community. My child's not the only one. My child needed open heart surgery at 16, and he didn't survive that. I have other friends, one sitting here that had a daughter pass away at 21, just unexpected, heart disease, heart problems. So, this is my son Trinidad, who lost his life to a heart disease and never was born with one, and just came about at 14. I am begging you to really listen to us when it comes to this plan, because we've been begging and begging and we've not been heard. And I'm telling you, we're on our knees begging. And I feel like you're kicking us while we're down. And I feel like this is another form of genocide, because if you guys allow certain things to happen in our community, that will affect us 100 years down the line. And I don't know how many more children will lose to this. And that is what I wanted to share with you guys. Thank you.
Everyone.
Hello.
My name is Abba, and I, first of all, would like to thank everyone here for giving us the opportunity to be here today to speak on behalf of our neighborhood. I'm sorry, I'm a little bit catching up my breath. I had to go somewhere and come back, so I was kind of like rushing. But I have 5 kids raising in Phillips neighborhood with a family of 8, and lived there since 2008. And the youngest of my 5 was born in Phillips neighborhood, and the only child that in my family have experienced respiratory problems at a young age. And so when you hear about all of our concerns about Phillips neighborhood, it is real, and I'm pretty sure you guys have been hearing over and over and over on all the things that we are going through in Phillips neighborhood. Some of the stuff you continue to hear is everything that, according to research, continues to show in our neighborhood. We continue to have the highest respiratory issues, asthma diagnosis in the Phillips neighborhood. We have the highest poverty rate. We have a lot of homelessness issues. We have a lot of opioids problems, a lot of drug issues, and we're here today to actually ask you guys to support a project that would promote hope for our neighborhood. This project is going to help our community to have a housing opportunities that would have real affordable, would promote real affordability for the neighborhood. It would provide jobs for the community. It would help our youth and youngsters in recovery training programs. And above all, it could become a model for city of Minneapolis as well as our neighborhood. And so we're here hoping that you're able to support this project and help our neighborhood with our fight to social justice, our fight and our continued fight to fight for the air that we breathe, fight for our children, our elderly, each one of us. Our health is why we're here today, and I do hope that you all support us. And thank you very much for allowing us to be here today.
Thank you very much. Thank you all for showing up. Thank you, Cassie, for that very powerful presentation. We have exceeded our time allotted for this presentation. I think it was informative and useful, and I know that the issues in this community are deep and extensive, and I think that presentation exemplified that, and we do need to move on with the rest of our agenda at this point in time. And so we will receive those comments and file them for our records, and then we need to move to our final agenda item, which is the reports of committees. Thank you. Thank you for your presentation. We really appreciate you coming down today. Thank you so much. So we will begin with the Economic Development and Regulatory Service Committee. That report will be given by Chair Goodman.
Thank you, Madam Vice President. The Economic Development and Regulatory Services Committee is going to have 10 items that we're bringing forward for approval on Friday. 1 are the liquor licenses, and 2 are the gambling licenses. 3 are the gambling license renewals. 4 is a reinstatement of a rental license. 5 is a contract amendment with the right-of-way construction company for board-up services for boarded and vacant buildings. 6 are the grant applications to deed. 7 are some changes we need to make due to the 2040 plan that have to do with Great Streets eligible areas. We're not taking anyone off, just to be fair. 8 is...
Excuse me, Councilmember Goodman. Can we please move the conversations outside, please, so that we can continue to conduct business? Thank you for moving your conversations outside to the hallway. Thank you, Councilmember Goodman. Can you please continue?
Sure. 8 is a change in the redevelopment contract with the Alden Smith House, and I'll have a revised report for committee on Friday. 9 is a sidewalk cafe mobile food license vendor restrictions. This has to do with the Hennepin Avenue reconstruction, and there's going to be a bunch of changes we need to be able to tell them they can get off the street when we're doing project work in that area. And 10 is authorizing the extension of the exclusive development rights agreement with the Park Board, United Properties, and others with regard to the Upper Harbor Terminal, as well as authorizing a right of entry contract with the Park Board. So with that, I'm happy to answer questions on items 1 through 10.
Thank you, Councilmember Goodman. Are there any questions? Seeing none, we will move to the next committee report, the Housing Policy Development Committee, given by Chair Gordon.
Very brief meeting, very brief report. 2 items, both rather technical and on consent. One has to do with registering title of city-owned property, and the other one restructuring a loan.
Thank you, Councilmember Gordon. Are there any questions? Are there any questions? Seeing none, our next committee report is the Public Health, Environment, Civil Rights, and Engagement Committee, given by Chair Councilmember Cunningham.
Thank you, Madam Vice President. The Public Health, Environment, Civil Rights Engagement Committee is bringing forward 5 items for approval on Friday. The first is approving council appointments of 2 folks. Item number 2 is authorizing the submittal of a grant application to the state of Minnesota in the amount of $40,000 to establish residential pollinator habitats within neighborhoods. And item number 3 is accepting a grant from the Minnesota Department of Public Safety Office of Justice Programs for Inspiring Youth, which is the Health Department's early intervention program for young people at risk of involvement with violence. Item number 4 is accepting a grant from the Mississippi Watershed Management Organization to hire interns to assist in erosion and sediment control enforcement. And item number 5 is accepting a grant from the Robert Wood Johnson Foundation and the Public Health Accreditation Board for Cross-Sector Innovation Initiative. I also just want to highlight for my colleagues that we had 2 presentations at the committee. One was reviewing the strategic plan for the health department, as well as getting an update on the opioid work that the city is undertaking. So that is an issue that's across the city. So in case you're curious about updates on what the health department has been doing, that information can be found on the LIMS system. I am happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Councilmember Cunningham. Are there any questions? Are there any questions? Seeing no questions, our next committee report is the Transportation and Public Works Committee, given by Chair Reich.
Thank you, Madam Vice President. The committee forwards 12 items for full council consideration. Items 1 through 4 are actions for the various reconstruction projects in the city as listed. 5 is the gift acceptance from Globe Mail for lodging and other things for a Globe Drive Mobility Summit. 6, 7, 8, 9, and 10 are appointments for our various small special service districts in the city. And 11 and 12 are accepting bids for work of the department. I will stand for questions.
Thank you, Chair Wright. Are there any questions? Seeing none, our next committee report is the Public Safety and Emergency Management Committee, and that report will be given by its Vice Chair, Councilmember Fletcher.
Thank you, Chair Jenkins. Public Safety and Emergency Management is bringing forward 4 items for consideration this week. First is a contract amendment with Corner House for forensic interview services. The second is a contract with Dakota County Technical College for emergency and non-emergency vehicle training for police officers. Item number 3 is a contract amendment with the Hennepin County Sheriff's Office for pre-trial detention fees. And item number 4 is a release of liability for our workforce director system, finally getting MPD out of the software sales business.
Thank you, Councilmember Fletcher. Are there any questions? Are there any questions? Seeing no questions, the next committee report is the Ways and Means Committee, and that report will also be given by the Vice Chair, Councilmember Fletcher.
Thank you again, Chair Jenkins. The Ways and Means Committee is bringing forward 10 items for consideration. The first 2 are legal settlements. The third is granting permission to the city attorney to join amicus briefs on immigration-related policies. Items 4 and 5 are contract amendments on convention center work. 5 is revisions to the convention center's permit for occupancy form. Item number 6 is the fourth quarter 2019 donation report. Item number 7 is gift acceptance for sponsors for this weekend's Community Connections Conference. Items number 8 and 9 are adjustments to non-represented employee salary schedules, cost of living increases, and item number 10 is collective bargaining agreement with the Professional Employees Unit. I'm happy to stand for questions.
Thank you, Councilmember Fletcher. Are there any questions? Seeing none, our final committee report is the Executive Committee report given by Councilmember Johnson.
Thank you, Madam Chair. The Executive Committee is bringing forward 7 items. The first 3 are all appointed positions. We're referring those to the Ways and Means Committee. The 4th is a Civil Service Commission appointment. The 5th and 6th are the appointments, reappointments of the city assessor and Director of Emergency Management. Those will be referred to their appropriate committees, and then the 7th is a collective bargaining agreement.
Thank you, Councilmember Johnson. Are there any questions? Are there any questions? Colleagues, I do want to thank you all for sitting through this very lengthy committee meeting. I want to acknowledge that Councilmember Cano and Public Works staff developed and distributed a document highlighting the efforts taken at the Hiawatha Maintenance Facility to incorporate many of the ideas and concerns expressed today by the community to address those concerns. And so you have that available to you to be able to speak comprehensively about the issue as we move forward. So seeing no further business before this committee, we are adjourned.